Sometimes when a show becomes lost media, it's because all the physical copies were made in a way that degrades and becomes exceedingly rare over time. Sometimes it's because it was too niche and not enough people watched it to make copies for themselves. But sometimes it's because the network that broadcasted the show desperately wants the world to forget that it ever existed. And that last situation is the reason why a large chunk of the English dub of the show Bunny Maloney seems to no longer exist. Bunny Maloney's 52-episode original release aired from June to August of 2009 and was later dubbed into English, Bosnian, Irish Gaelic, and Telugu. If you're from the States and have heard of or watched Bunny Maloney, it's probably because you saw it on the on-demand channel Kabillion or its associated channel Kabillion Girls Rule. So why has this show seemingly been scrubbed from all original channels and left to the domain of archivists and lost media hunters? Well, maybe it was the excessive focus on adult relationship dynamics and the extremely toxic relationship between the two main characters. Maybe it was the total lack of positive messaging or educational value. Maybe it was the strange proclivity for sexual humor and lewd behavior. Maybe it was the sexy cow brainwashing children into becoming furries. Well, why don't we take a look together? In this video, I'll be going through Bunny Maloney episode by episode and examining what it was, why it flopped, and most frustratingly, why it could have been great. First, let me give you a rundown of the characters and setting. This show is set in the city of Bunnyville, an urban metropolis that has a major San Francisco thing going on. Or maybe Parasokyo in this case? Basically, it's a generic metropolitan city with a bunch of Japanese text and motifs thrown in just for the aesthetic. Let's start with the Protect team, a trio of characters that comprise our three main protagonists, plus their manager. Despite the super suits and transformation sequences and giant mech, it kind of feels weird to classify these three as superheroes in the first place. The huge majority of conflicts that they find themselves in are extremely mundane. First, there's the titular Bunny Maloney. He's pink, he's cute, he's a complete bum and a lazy POS who refuses to consider doing anything if it's not entirely self-serving. He's broke, he's impulsive, he's reckless and irresponsible. He's constantly making the audience ask, are we supposed to be rooting for this guy? And I guess the answer is yes. In the English dub, he has an inexplicable New York accent, which sounds a little bit strange because the voice actor is British, but honestly I wouldn't have it any other way. He keeps an aquarium and tends to prioritize his fish at inappropriate times. Next, there's Bunny's girlfriend and second member of the Protect team, Candy Bunny. She's pink, she's cute, she's distinguishable from Bunny by having breasts, eyelashes, blush, and a red band around her left ear, and she's also a completely terrible person. She's moody, she's fickle, she's materialistic, she's extremely abusive. And like sometimes the things that Bunny does to set her off are reasonable for a person to get angry about, but certainly not to the extremes that she does. While her negative traits are probably worse than Bunny's, she also generally has her act together a little more, and of the two of them is clearly the more functional adult. She also has a dog pet thing named Pachi. Next, and by far the least awful member of the Protect team, Jean-Francois. I'll get back to you on that. He's a blue fellow who's only capable of saying his own name a la Pikachu. He's like 85% friend and 15% pet. Is he a kid? Is he a grown-up? Unclear. He may not be able to clearly express himself, but he does his best to be a good person to everyone around him, which really cannot be said of the other two. His only vice is that he's addicted to this world's version of Dance Dance Revolution, and is that really a vice at all? He has a best friend named Ben, who I will not be elaborating on in this section because his main personality trait is being Jean-Francois' best friend. Next up, coming in looking like some kind of bootleg Takashi Murakami character, there's Stan Uki, the Protect team's holographic advisor and mission control. To be clear, he is not actually a hologram, he just doesn't usually show up in person. Although he's not a public-facing member of the Protect team, he's the only one of the four who is capable of making sure that the team is even vaguely useful. He is frequently seen clarifying obvious aspects of conflicts that everybody else was too dumb to notice, and just generally preventing the others from falling over each other like a group of blindfolded toddlers. Then there's the singular source of the Protect team's issues, besides Bunny and Candy's troubled relationship, Professor de Billiman. What motivates him to villainy? Deficiency. Basically, he's a big incel, obsessed with Candy, and makes every decision with the intention of either breaking them up or winning her over. And that's really about it. He spends all day, every day, stalking the Protect team, not with any world domination type motivation, just because he's too down bad to do anything else. To help him with his villainous strategies, he has a large team of spies that I presume are robots, and also his sidekick Modchi. The two of them live in a submarine that has a nasty tendency to be destroyed before the end of every episode. His name comes from the French word débilou, which means stupid. Then there's the aforementioned sidekick Manchi, who is presumably the same kind of species as Candy's pet of indeterminate origin Pachi, except he has a much greater level of sapience. He frequently cracks wise and is less than loyal to Debilumin, frequently making jokes at his expense and sabotaging his plans either as an act of petty revenge or just for his own amusement. Moving on to the characters who aren't aligned with the Protect team or with the villains, there's General Noah Cack, the idiotic, bloviating leader of Bunnyville's military. He tends to alternate between having completely outsized reactions to minor threats or being completely unresponsive to major world-threatening crises. The Protect team's relationship to the military is somewhat unclear, but they seem to at least be linked. Then there's Charlotte, Candy Bunny's best friend. She's a cow, yes, a cow, not a goat, and she embodies a very peculiar trope for a show with a young audience because her main character trait is slutty. She's nearly as obsessed with Bunny as Debilumin is with Candy, and tries to get with him at every opportunity. But unlike Debilumin, she has no issue pulling guys in general, she just isn't able to get them to stick around. She's not very smart, generally clueless, and tries to use her sex appeal to get out of any conflict. And let's please just get one thing out of the way now. Yes, she is sexy. They designed the cow to be sexy on purpose. It was not an accident. This is not a hear me out moment. The designers woke up one day and said, we've got to design a hot cow the likes of which this world has never seen, and now all of us have to deal with the fallout of that decision. Please compartmentalize this information efficiently because I don't want to hear about how this character is sending you into a furry crisis. The last of the characters who I feel are worth mentioning is Louie, a street cleaner and bug person who is Bunny Maloney's #1 fan. At least in the English dub, he talks with a bit of a feminine affect, and that plus his bunny obsession makes him feel at least vaguely queer-coded. He doesn't appear in all of that many episodes, but when he does, he's usually getting himself into absurd levels of peril and just being generally a goober. Now that you know the main and supporting cast, it's time to dive into the episodes. There seems to be a bit of disagreement on the order of the episodes, with some of the YouTube re-uploads claiming wildly different episode numbers than the alternative sources. This show is episodic with almost zero continuity, so I guess it doesn't really matter that much, but I'm going to be referencing the episode order listed on the Lost Media Wiki. Hey, by the way, fun fact, if you don't enjoy watching recap videos, you don't actually have to watch them. I personally don't assume that the people watching this video have seen this show, and I don't necessarily expect to go out and watch it afterwards. And the people who have seen the show, I don't expect to remember the episodes thoroughly or to have seen all the episodes. If you prefer to just watch the show yourself, you can go do that without leaving me whiny comments about how recap videos are destroying the video essay genre. This is Spark Notes for Cartoons, and I'm not pretending that it's anything else. Episode 1, Casanova Clone. The first episode begins with the villain Debilumin. That's a mouthful. The villain Debilumin laughing maniacally as he announces his evil plan. He intends to use a charming clone of Bunny Maloney, slightly mixed with his own DNA, to convince Candy to leave him. Cut to the Maloney apartment, and Bunny and Jean-Francois are playing some kind of legally distinct from Nintendo Wii console, and we're introduced to Bunny Maloney's inscrutable New York accent that he uses in the English dub.
Can't speak now! Been playing 16 hours in a row!
Candy's trying to get his attention to give him a present, and he completely blows her off. Oops, it's their anniversary and he completely forgot. Candy events to Charlotte in this totally not a bar that they go out of their way to clarify only serves water in a cocktail glass. And Charlotte wonders if this means she'll finally have a chance with Bunny.
You should so dump him. Then he would have to lower standards and maybe date me. I adore guys with low standards.
Candy wishes out loud for a man who's more sophisticated and romantic than Bunny, and that's when the Casanova clone shows up. Candy, under the assumption that this is just Bunny attempting to make up for his earlier fumble, is easily swept away. Bunny Maloney's back on his gamer grind and takes a bathroom break while Candy and the clone sneak away into the apartment. As Candy goes to bed, both Bunny and the clone wish her a good night, making everybody freak out. Candy, noticing that Bunny's jealous of the clone, insists that he stay. The clone consistently proves to be a better partner than Bunny, and so Bunny schemes to get rid of him. Meanwhile, Candy's starting to get frustrated with the clone's doting because she's only putting up with it for the sake of making Bunny jealous. Bunny vows to take care of the clone once and for all, and we get our first instance of a scene that repeats in nearly every single episode, a Super Sentai parody transformation sequence. Meanwhile, Candy has been kidnapped by Debilumin and is smitten by Bunny's fervor to get her back. Bunny and Jean-Francois turn Debilumin's missiles against him and blow up his submarine, culminating in Bunny and Candy romantically reuniting. Kind of. Charlotte goes on a date with the clone's twitching comatose husk. Episode 2, Text Message Madness. The episode opens on Bunny and Jean-Francois eating burgers and watching their soaps. I love the little live-action visual gags in this show. Candy calls and asks Bunny to look out for a dress that she has coming in the mail, and he freaks out when he sees Jean-Francois blowing his nose into it and ends up dumping his cell phone in the fish tank. A conveniently timed advertisement for a cutting-edge cell phone plays, and Bunny has a weak semblance of an internal conflict before deciding to just steal Candy's credit cards and go buy one. Then we're introduced to Louie, who aspires to work with Bunny as a superhero. He tries to call Bunny on their apartment's landline, but it doesn't go through. Bunny's new phone scans him and unilaterally decides that he's too dumb to use all the features.
Our tests show that your IQ is too low to use all the sophisticated functions on this telephone. In place of them, we suggest a Babes in Car screensaver.
But Debilumin is spying on him and unlocks all the features remotely, then switches around his outgoing messages to mess with him. The message meant for Jean-Francois goes to Louie, getting his hopes up, and the message meant for Louie goes to Candy, which sounds like a breakup text. Meanwhile, the message intended for Candy is sent to General Nowakak, who interprets it as a coded threat. Candy, furious with Bunny for breaking up with her over text, uses her mech to go hunt him down, and Jean-Francois is sent to intercept. Bunny, Candy, and the military all converge. Bunny announces over a megaphone what his actual text to Candy was, therefore causing the military to identify him as the aggressor and unleash a barrage of missiles on his ass, which conveniently miss and end up wrecking Debilumin's submarine instead. Bunny, having accidentally revealed that he just used Candy's credit card without her permission, speeds away to avoid a whooping. Episode 3, Atomic Flea. The show opens with an ad for Bunny Pizza, which is much more successful than Debilumin's gigantic schnoz pizza. In an act of revenge, he chemically mutates a small army of fleas, which his minions distribute around the city's pizzerias. Meanwhile, Bunny is gloating over his face pizza, and Jean-Francois is sent to pick one up. He unknowingly takes one infested with a mutant flea. Jean-Francois comes in with the pizza, and him and Bunny inexplicably get into a karate battle. When Candy opens the pizza box, she finds the pizza completely eaten by the mutant flea. Then it jumps onto Bunny, but with a well-placed kick from Jean-Francois, it gets knocked away. As they're hiding in the bathroom, Stan's hologram says that the flea is highly radioactive, which in this world means he'll be charged with electricity if you get bit, and not that you'll, get cancer eventually. Bunny, having already been bitten by the flea, zaps both of his roommates. Debilumin initiates phase 2 of the plan, which causes the fleas to rapidly clone themselves and attack the rest of the city, therefore causing a PR crisis for Bunny Pizza and spiking the sales of Debilumin Pizza. Transformation sequence as they get into the mech, which Stan refers to as the Bunny Ganger. It's been newly installed with a vacuum arm to suck up all the fleas. Once they're all bagged up, Debilumin presses a button to initiate phase 3, which turns the fleas into an enemy mech. Protect Team wins, the fleas fly back to Debilumin's submarine, which this time is sunk intentionally to drown the bugs. Bunny is sad that he can't zap people anymore, and in a surprise twist, Stan has cornered the pizza market, much to Bunny's dismay. Episode 4, Rabid Rabbit. Debilumin interrupts Machi as he's role-playing a cheeky bit of workplace harassment.
What would the other nurses say?
They'd say you were a very lucky girl.
And feeds his Dr. Doll to his genetically engineered monstrosity of the week, a baby bunny who will mercilessly attack any male in its field of vision. Candy answers the door to find the baby, seemingly abandoned, and her maternal instincts immediately take over and she takes it in, leaving the others to babysit as she goes to buy diapers. Bunny and Jean-Francois are attacked aggressively, and Candy gets sidetracked and ends up at the Aqua Bar with a baby-fevered Charlotte. Stan puts together that the baby is yet another Debilumin trap, and Candy arrives back at the ruined apartment to no baby and no bunny. Bunny and Jean-Francois, meanwhile, have been baited away from the apartment to a remote location where the baby expands to kaiju size and attacks. Candy, having been brought up to speed, intercepts in the Bunny Ganger and shows the monster baby the face of his real father and true enemy, Debilumin. Cue obligatory submarine destruction. Candy and Bunny come to terms with the fact that they're not ready to have kids yet. Episode 5, Hasta la vista, Bunny. The episode begins with Bunny complaining about the way that Jean-Francois' friend Ben constantly hangs around their apartment, and in the meantime, Debilumin's henchmen covertly install a hypnotic override into their dance game's virtual reality helmet to make whoever's wearing it behave like a Terminator parody. Ben dons the helmet. Debilumin's annoyed that he didn't get Jean-Francois, but he accepts it anyway. Meanwhile, Bunny Maloney is acting out because he feels like he's not getting enough attention. And in fact, he's so full of it that he doesn't even suspect anything unusual when Ben starts attacking him. Ben's hypnotic controls start malfunctioning, and so he's summoned back to Debilumin's submarine. And I know we're only 5 episodes in, but I feel like maybe they should have figured out by now that any physical assault-based issues in their life have something to do with this guy. All 3 of them move out, and these 11-minute episodes really make it obvious how much time is spent on this recycled mech sequence. After they arrive, Ben has been equipped with a red octopus mech, and Jean-Francois ejects the other 2 out of the Bunny Ganger in order to defeat his hypnotized friend with the power of dance. The bunny ganger starts to break down, and so Candy and Bunny do a distracting dance atop Debilumin's submarine, making the Octomech unload its missiles onto it and breaking Ben's hypnosis. Back at the Maloney residence, Ben pretends to be the Terminator again to get Bunny to stop nagging him for hogging the TV. Episode 6, Candy's Birthday Surprise. Bunny Maloney is a crap boyfriend yet again and forgets Candy's birthday. She demands that he get her a very specific, highly expensive sweater by early afternoon, or else. Debilumin, the stalker that he is, listens in and decides to intercept the gift before Bunny can get to it and give it to Candy himself. Raunchy speculates about the genetic abomination that would be created by the two of them having children. Bunny goes to buy the sweater, with Candy's credit cards of course, as Debilumin's henchmen break in and steal it. With only 10 minutes left until Candy's deadline, Stan doubts that the task of stealing it back can be accomplished. And surely we can't save time by not using this recycled sequence again? Oh no, surely not. Bunny and Jean-Francois load up in the mech to enact his highly publicized top-secret plan to get the sweater back. Raunchy preemptively equips his snorkeling mask. Bunny keeps wasting time by explaining his plan, but for once he faces off with Debilumin one-on-one. Or rather, one-on-one plus unlimited disposable henchmen. As Bunny lands a decisive blow, the sweater is sent careening into the ocean. In a furious rage, the Protect team unloads a barrage of missiles onto the submarine, and Bunny prematurely celebrates before the sweater is pulled out of the ocean, now comically shrunken. With only 20 seconds left, Bunny shows up to the aqua bar and gives Candy the sweater she asked for, but as a keychain. The episode abruptly ends as the timer runs out, and Bunny Maloney is presumably killed. So this show doesn't seem all that strange yet, right? Well, the beginning of this series is as normal as it gets. Strap in. Episode 7, Noah Cack Wants You. Episode 7 opens on a ludicrously sensual ad for a sweepstakes to win a new MP3 player.
Oh, you know you want to.
Which catches Bunny hook, line, and sinker. It turns out that by signing up for the sweepstakes, you're actually signing up to join the military, and I kind of thought that the Protect team was already part of the military, maybe? Maybe Bunny and Jean-Francois are now double military? We're introduced to this new character called Jenkins, who came up with the sweepstakes scheme and also is infatuated with the general.
Doing stuff for my superior officers just makes me go goose pimply all over.
She's a freak, but I respect it. A group of soldiers storm into the Bunny Maloney residence to abduct Bunny and Jean-Francois, and Candy is peeved. In order to save face, Bunny pretends that he did it on purpose. Candy decides that maybe she's actually kind of into it. Bunny and Jean-Francois try to ditch as they're dragged into basic training, and Debilumin decides to get his blackmail on and pulls out a DVD that is heavily implied to contain a sex tape involving the general. Boot camp montage where they do everything wrong. Debilumin blackmails the general, demanding him to eliminate 2 of his soldiers, and the general initially refuses until he realizes that the 2 soldiers in question are Bunny and Jean-Francois, after which he wholeheartedly accepts. The 2 of them are told that they're going to be testing an invisible tank, also known as sitting helplessly while they're shot with missiles. Candy comes and scoops them up in their car at the last second. Debilumin and Raunchy, bummed out about their plan not working out, decide to watch the blackmail tape. It's Jenkins seductively singing Happy Birthday to the General a la Marilyn Monroe.
Happy birthday to you.
But the submarine gets sunk again before anything more illicit happens. If you thought an implied sex tape is the raunchiest that this show is gonna get,
honey, you've got a big storm coming.
Episode 8, A Wrinkle in the Protect Team. Bunny and Jean-Francois are chilling, doing their thing until they're interrupted by an ear-splitting scream from Candy. She got a wrinkle and she's inconsolable.
Make the most of your looks while you've got 'em, girls, 'cause it's a cold old world out there when they're gone.
Great lesson for children. That's right, fear aging, little ones. She goes out and Charlotte ineffectively tries to console her until they're approached by the 2 businessmen who we've seen in some commercials from previous episodes. But they're not here to flirt like Candy had hoped. They're just excited to share that they've closed a deal for a big budget movie starring Bunny Maloney. They show up at the Maloney residence to break the news, and it's immediately all that Bunny can think about. Candy, narcissistic as ever, attributes his distraction to her looking old. Meanwhile, Debilumin assumes that this strain in their relationship is the perfect time for him to swoop in and steal her away. The businessmen take Bunny out and encourage him to break up with Candy and expel her from the Protect team, claiming that he'll do better as a star if he's single. He takes the businessmen to the Protect team headquarters, which Candy hears news of and is furious at him for breaking protocol. She heads there herself, beating his ass upon arrival, which Bunny finds extremely hot. If he's into it, I guess. The businessmen recast her as the lead in the movie, and she beats their asses as well. Somehow this all still culminates in Debilumin's submarine getting wrecked. Episode 9, Polterrabbitgeist. This episode opens on the Maloney residence being recorded for some kind of real estate TV feature, and the camera crew is swiftly given the boot after they attempt to buy the apartment. The others are sour about being hidden away and the fact that Candy invited them in without permission. Bunny's sulking is cut short by a disturbing interruption on the TV, claiming to be a message from the dead, delivered by a familiar face. As you may have gathered, DeBilliman's scheme in this episode is to convince the three that their apartment is haunted. Bunny, still sour about the whole camera crew thing, starts packing up his things with no hesitation. Candy tries to convince him to stay with some soothing domestic violence. It works well enough, and they agree to attempt an exorcism. Disco style. This show has a lot of extremely gifable animation loops. DeBilliman enacts the next step in his plan and turns the gravity off so all three of them just float out of the place. As the henchmen abscond, one of them drops their DeBilliman-branded anti-gravity gun, giving him away as the source of the haunting. They show up and enact justice by wrecking the submarine. Episode 10, Bunny's fish go off. Bunny comes sneaking in with a big heart-shaped package behind his back, assuming that Candy isn't around to see. He shows up, snatches it, and it's for his fish. She's furious that he's using her credit cards to spend lavishly on his aquarium, and Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung beat the shit out of each other? What? As usual, DeBilliman is up to no good, and for a high-tech paramilitary group, the Protect team sure allows their apartment to remain bugged to high heaven. Candy cries about Bunny loving his fish more than her, and so she gives him an ultimatum. It's her or the fish. He refuses to choose, and she breaks his elevator chair. Although they can no longer afford groceries due to Bunny's reckless spending, the expensive fish food gives his fish genius-level intellect.
E, 2 lines, 2. Well, it doesn't mean anything, but...
Except it also makes them evil because it's a DeBilliman product. Bunny attempts to do maintenance on his busted elevator chair, and the fish send a clam flying to bite him in the ass, and then an inconvenient electrical surge causes him to go careening into the tank, where they attempt to eat him. Once he gets out, the fish start leaping out of the tank, and after they're back in and subdued, Candy flushes the rest of the fish food, causing the local wildlife to consume it, and you'll never guess what happens next. Back at home, everyone reconciles, and Pachi eats a fish flake, causing this episode's abrupt end. I think this one may have been my favorite of the episodes we've seen so far. I actually had to pause to laugh a few times. The one-liners are great, the slapstick moments are great. I still don't understand the point of this bit, but I'm glad they included it anyway. Episode 11, Bunny's Big Hit. Jean-Francois and Ben are kicking Pachi around like a soccer ball. Don't worry guys, he seems into it. Then he goes careening out of control and knocks into Bunny as he's eating a sandwich. One of them happened to be recording at the time. They upload the video to the internet where it instantly goes viral. Montage of people ignoring pressing real-world issues to laugh at the viral video. Candy and Charlotte head out to see a daredevil that they're swooning over, and for once Bunny is the one to get jealous. He plans to recapture her attention with a follow-up viral video to eclipse the first one and make him look like a badass. DeBilliman is sick with the flu. Bunny's attempts to recapture his virality fall flat, and Candy ends up extremely unimpressed by the daredevil. The same can't be said for Charlotte. Bunny, deciding to copy the daredevil to go viral again, gets a cannon and plans to shoot himself across the bay. Louie shows up for the first time in a while and ends up stuck inside the cannon. As Bunny tries to pull him out, Ben leans on the detonation lever and sends both of them flying across the bay. Bunny tries to make the best of a bad situation. The submarine gets destroyed for unrelated reasons. It seems like they're not going to make it, but Louie's gut acts as a skipping stone and they land safely across the bay. Bunny accomplishes his goal of going even more viral than he did before, except just for the first part of the jump where his face was planted firmly in Louie's ass cheeks. Episode 12, Carrots Are a Girl's Best Friend. Our protagonists and DeBilliman are participating in a mech battle tournament. Everyone gets dramatically introduced, and Charlotte is a Libra.
I'm Candy's best friend. I'm a Libra. I'm available.
DeBilliman places a large bet on his own side with, a large supply of hemorrhoid cream? Candy berates Bunny for slacking off on his training, and gets even angrier with him when she learns that he used Candy's computer with his nasty grease fingers. Candy is established to be a virtual world player on a game that sounds more or less like Second Life. However, so is DeBilliman. Candy gets a gift of a sparkling pendant from her online crush D-Man, and she's sadly too dense to realize his true identity. A letter attached to the gift asks her to wear the pendant on the night of the final, and this will allow him to hijack the Bunny Ganger. Candy is convinced that D-Man is actually Bunny and goes along with it. Bunny's fish convince him that he needs to get ripped. Commence training montage. The final begins and the Protect team ends up getting severely pummeled due to the interference from Candy's pendant. Stan points out the interference and Candy smashes it, turning the tides of the battle. The Octomech gets blasted away and you'll never guess where it lands. I thought this mech battle tournament setup was pretty interesting, but I feel like they didn't do enough with it. Way too much of this episode was spent doing things other than a mech battle tournament. I don't know, I wouldn't have minded seeing them go through a few prior rounds instead of just bumming around at home. Episode 13, Germ Free. Bunny is worried about Candy because she didn't show up to practice and is apparently missing from the apartment. Turns out she was just at the mall and is distracted by this trendy new cleaning product, which she proceeds to spray on literally everything. This trend has taken over the whole city by storm, much to Bunny's annoyance. And much to my surprise, this seems to not be a debilment plot, even though getting the entire city addicted to cleaning spray seems like the kind of thing that he would do. Turns out that the hyper-reliance on this new cleaning spray is literally killing everyone by destroying their immune systems. Cue a slightly horrifying montage where everyone starts to die, including the Protect team, Debiliment, the entire military, and even the Octopus news reporter. The Grim Reaper shows up to claim Candy and Bunny, but gets scared off by their automatic vacuum, which ejects the dirty sock onto Pachi and cures his dyingness. The three of them realize that the cure is to expose themselves to germs and stop dying after they play in some trash. They get in the Bunny Ganger and shower trash onto the city, saving everyone. Debiliment is saved too. What? Why is that a feature in the first place? This was a weird little episode and maybe a little bit too existential for a young audience. There was an awful lot of time spent on barely comedic shots of the entire cast slowly dying. I'm not sure what kind of message is supposed to be conveyed by "you'll kill literally everyone if you overuse disinfectant spray," but I can see it giving children some weird neuroses. Bonus points for the introduction of Bunny Grim Reaper, who looks cool as hell. Episode 14, Spouse or Louse. With this episode, we're going to start running into a problem that will become more and more pronounced as the series progresses. That is the fact that the English dub of this show is pretty poorly preserved. 20 out of its 52 episodes are no longer available to be viewed in English and are considered lost media. However, that doesn't mean that the episodes themselves are lost media, just the English dub is. So I'm going to have to rely on my barely passable knowledge of French and running the auto-generated subtitles through Google Translate to be able to understand what they're saying. While the auto subtitles can be less than accurate at times, roll the botched subtitles compilation.
Saboter notre canular et humilier mon Bunny chéri comme ça!
They do at least provide a general idea of the dialogue, at least when the characters are talking in a normal conversational tone. That said, forgive me if I misinterpret any of these plot beats, I'm doing my best here. Bunny and Candy appear on a couple's quiz game where the winner gets to donate money to a charity of their choice. Bunny's choice, much to the audience's confusion, is a fish protection society. He brought his pink fish with him for moral support, which ends up backfiring because he answers every question as if they were being asked about the fish instead of about Candy. Candy, watching back the show later, decides to break up with Bunny over it. Charlotte says that she's too good for him and leaves to go seduce him herself. He rejects her flirtation, but Debiliment records the interaction and doctors it to make it sound like he was receptive. Bunny returns home and attempts to win Candy back by claiming that his flub the other night was due to a very minor case of serious brain damage. Candy counters by showing him the manipulated video. She kicks him out of the apartment and threatens to eat his fish, but the threat is hollow. Bunny returns to the game show, this time getting every single question right, presumably about Candy, but honestly I was a little bit confused. Candy storms into the aqua bar, still furious at Bunny, and is then shown the actual footage of Bunny rejecting Charlotte. Stan says, translated quote, "The version you saw was more trafficked than smuggled Mexican whiskey," which is an interesting turn of phrase that I don't think you'd ever hear in English. Meanwhile, Machi's been having fun doctoring Debiliment's sentences and accidentally broadcasts a command over the loudspeaker to sink the submarine, to which his robotic henchmen oblige. Bunny, back at the apartment, notices that his pink fish is missing and that Candy is cooking something. Turns out that the fish is just in a bowl next to her and she's making eggs. Bunny and Candy call each other pathetic losers, and the episode ends. So some notes on the French voice acting. All of the roles seem really good, and some of them are extremely seamless in comparison with the English dub. Candy and Stan, for instance, kind of sound like the same person speaking two different languages. Bunny also sounds good, but I have to say that his bizarre New York accent that they use in the English version has kind of grown on me. One character that I personally think is better in the French version is Debiliment, who sounds a bit more like a gremlin in this version instead of the breaky adolescent thing he has going on in English.
Il faut un début à toute chose, ma peluche sceptique. Candy will be mine!
Machi is also pretty different from French to English, but I couldn't really say I like one better than the other. For all the issues that the show has, the quality of the voice acting is not one of them in either of the languages that I'm watching this in. Episode 15, The Dispense Sense 9000. This episode begins with an advertisement for a universal translator device which Candy has ordered to be able to understand Pachi. Bunny plays keep away with it because he's a dick. In their fighting, it ends up at the feet of Jean-Francois, where it immediately starts translating him as saying extremely rude things about Bunny. Plot hole alert! Bunny Maloney can canonically understand Jean-Francois, so he just conveniently forgot how for this episode.
What if something terrible has happened? Jean-Francois!
Don't worry. When Candy's a no-show for mecha battle practice?
Jean-Francois, assuming that the world still works like it used to in previous episodes, attempts to explain himself, and this only makes the translator more vicious, which culminates in him getting kicked out of the apartment. I hate this so much. I hate seeing him sad. I hate seeing him be mistreated. This episode is already punishing. Predictably, the bad translations are due to de Billiman's interference, with Monchi on the mic practicing his comedy roasts. Jean-Francois rides through the city, surrounded by reminders of the thing that ruined his life. We next see him getting kicked out of the aqua bar, and then his bike's tires are stolen, and then he's homeless. I'm so angry about this. Whoever wrote this episode, how dare you? Candy gets Bunny to admit that he misses Jean-Francois with her classic technique. Let's say it all together now. Domestic violence! Bunny decides to cope with this new realization by renting out his room. Jean-Francois lashes out about being mistreated and gets arrested. Bunny interviews and subsequently rejects a series of applicants, including the General and Jenkins, Louis dancing in his underwear in a South Park parody. Candy chastises him for not giving anyone a chance, and Charlotte pipes in with an offer to move in herself. And the next sequence of events is so overwhelming that I need to employ my entire triple drink combo to get into it. We've got soju for coping, an energy drink to make myself adequately alert, and water so I don't get clicky in the mouth. Let's go. So here's a sticky situation. This next part is so completely inappropriate that I'm worried if I show it on screen and describe it at the same time, my video is gonna get hit with that yellow dollar sign. May I remind you of the channels that this was aired on? In France, it was Canal Plus and Canal Plus Family, the former during family-friendly broadcasting segments, and the latter being an entire family-friendly channel. And in the States, it was Kabillion, an on-demand network entirely made for children's programming. This is never a problem that should ever be had when discussing a show aired on those types of channels. So I suppose I'll need to present this as a series of censored stills. So, when Charlotte is proposing to move in with Bunny, she starts out on all fours facing away from him and moves from this already very suggestive pose to sit down facing him by deliberately spreading her legs at him, giving Bunny an absolute face full of cowardsy, which he clearly stares directly at. All this while she teasingly tells him not to wander into her room in the middle of the night. All in front of Candy, by the way. What a good friend. And if you already thought those couple seconds were a lot, well, here comes Stan with an announcement that Jean-Francois is about to kill himself by jumping off a bridge.
Hello? Hello? What the fuck is this episode?
Well, in reality, he's actually just trying to retrieve something that he dropped onto the outer ledge. But when the bunny ganger shows up and startles him, he loses balance and falls to his death. No, he falls harmlessly into the water. Bunny suddenly remembers that he's been able to understand Jean-Francois this whole time, and... You thought this episode was over, didn't you? You thought they didn't have any more weird shit to pull? Well, so, Bunny and Candy put Jean-Francois to bed, and Candy asks Bunny if he wants to turn in for an early night. Bunny doesn't quite understand what she means by this, and so she clarifies by saying, quote, you know, bunny cuddles, Candy and Bunny's playtime, the tickle mambo, baking love cookies. She says this while she... Hold on a second. She starts pole dancing. She entirely just starts pole dancing. On screen. Kids show. Bunny finally understands what she means, and this insane train wreck of an episode is finally over. Other episodes have featured off-color humor, but this one is just entirely next level. I can't find any evidence of this episode having been produced or distributed for an older audience. I really think they just jacked up the raunchiness factor like crazy just because they could. This episode was mentally punishing, man. Between the relentless mistreatment of Sweetie Pie Jean-Francois and the extremely uncomfortable, inappropriate humor, this 11-minute episode felt like it sucked up an hour of my life. And like, please don't get me wrong, I don't have a problem with inappropriate humor in animated shows. It's just that when the target audience doesn't align with that type of humor, I start to take issue with it. Even more subtle adult humor in kid shows I don't have a problem with. I just feel like this goes beyond a wink-wink, nudge-nudge joke added in for parents that kids won't understand, and crossing the boundary into teaching kids concepts that they need to not be learning from TV. I just really wish the show was made for adults in the first place. Like, it insists on inappropriate humor, but it does so in a way that's just so toothless and uncomfortable. I just think it would have been a better show if it aired on something like MTV or Adult Swim or other channels with an equivalent audience, and it was just allowed to be the adult comedy that it's clearly trying to be. In my ideal world, Bunny Maloney would have never aired on family programming, and he'd be allowed to say fuck. Let Bunny Maloney say fuck. Episode 16, Dawn of the Shrimp. Back into French-only territory. This episode opens on this sailor guy. We've seen him a couple times and I don't know if he has a name. I think he's an anthro-walrus or something. Anyway, he's being stalked by a mysterious figure that attacks him. Back at the Maloney residence, Candy and Jean-Francois are watching a scary movie and Bunny pops out to scare them, to Jean-Francois' horror and Candy's annoyance. Charlotte shows up with some Chinese food which Bunny tears into only to find that it's hiding a zombie shrimp, which bites him. Coincidentally, a news report about a zombie shrimp outbreak starts playing on the TV, where General Noah Cack tries to reassure the public that there's no danger and subsequently appears to be eaten. Bunny, of course, is quickly zombified. Candy and Charlotte don't buy it and head out to the bar, but Charlotte gets bitten by Bunny as she's leaving, assuming that he's flirting with her. This is one of those conflicts where you assume that Debilliman is behind it, but he's under attack like everybody else, and gets attacked by a shrimp when he's trying to radio Stan for help. Jean-Francois, noticing that Charlotte has been zombified, attacks her with various objects, but she's resilient enough to withstand it. Then she comes across Louis and zombifies him too. Meanwhile, Stan notices that zombies are weak to either country music or cell phone ringtones or maybe just banjo? Meanwhile, the Aquabot's robotic butler fights off the zombies while Candy and Jean-Francois hide upstairs. But these zombies are on the ultra-low end of the zombie speed spectrum, so they're not going to pose much of a threat for a while. Once they finally reach the top of the stairs, the two of them enter beatdown mode, although nothing works until Stan calls their cell phones, making their banjo ringtones go off, scaring the zombies away and eventually ridding them of the zombie virus entirely. Stan ends up curing the entire town with his remotely installed banjo ringtones, although he missed Debilliman. Cue submarine destruction. You know what? After that last one, I'm grateful that this episode was just a normal amount of weird. Episode 17, Jean-Francois Top Model. Candy's been hired as a model for a Protect Team branded deodorant company, which, judging by the name of the episode, isn't going to last long. Buddy Maloney questions why he's not involved in the marketing, to which the businessmen respond,
"She's sexy!"
Bunny attempts to convince the businessman of his own hotness, to no avail. However, what the businessmen do notice are Jean-Francois' smooth moves, which they determine to be adequately sexy. That's right, folks. In canon, Candy Bunny, sexy. Jean-Francois, sexy. Bunny Maloney, not sexy. Predictably, the businessmen ditch Candy Bunny to work with Jean-Francois instead. Bunny gets jealous and salty over his canonical lack of sexiness, and everybody ditches him because he's a loser. Debilliman isn't involved in this conflict at all, but still comments on it from the sidelines. Jean-Francois is now so ludicrously famous that he can't go anywhere without bodyguards. Bunny Maloney is mean to Jean-Francois again, and God, I want to kill him! What an unlikable protagonist! The businessmen show up and ask both Bunny Maloney and Jean-Francois to star in a music video, but Jean-Francois is too depressed to get up and only comes out and agrees to do the video after Bunny spends his entire night begging him to do it. And then there's a long, surreal music video sequence that ends up with Bunny in a full-body cast. However, the music video reached #1 on the charts, so he's satisfied regardless. The episode ends with Debilliman singing a parody of Yellow Submarine.
Go! Alright, go, man! Debilliman submarine! Debilliman submarine!
Machi, having heard enough, sinks the submarine on purpose. You would have thought that with that track record they would have gotten rid of the self-destruct button by now. This one was a really strange episode, but in a good way. It's very bizarre and slightly incoherent, but it really pulls out all the stops animation-wise. The music video sequence is kind of incredible. This was yet another episode that asserts Jean-Francois as the best member of the Protect Team and Bunny Maloney as the absolute dog worst. One big question that this episode leaves me with is, what is the deal with these pink and green Charlottes? My first instinct is that they're just Charlotte with like makeup or edited color, but in this scene where Jean-Francois walks over a bunch of them, they appear to be physically real. Are they clones? Are Charlottes in this world, or at least like the cow women, some kind of fembot? At this point, we can't be sure. Now that we're about 1/3 of the way through the series, I'd like to take a moment to discuss facts we know about the Bunny Maloney universe. First, humans in this world substantially outnumber the anthropomorphic animals, and the furries seem to be a socially privileged class in comparison. You wouldn't really know it just judging by the total lack of human main characters, but anytime there's a crowd shot, they're almost entirely human. Despite Bunny's laziness and general mediocrity, he seems to get a lot of opportunities just by virtue of being a bunny person. However, this doesn't necessarily translate to all types of animal people. Like Louis, for example. He's a cicada anthro, and he's always shown working menial jobs and getting thrown under the bus. I guess this more or less boils down to pretty privilege. Next, regarding the humans, nearly all of them are extremely chibi and diminutive, not much larger than the bunny folk, with the notable exception of the businessmen, who are relatively gigantic. Despite how strange Debilliman looks, he's much more averagely proportioned compared to this world's human population than these do. The culture of Bunnyville appears to be a hyper-capitalist hive mind society that but easily becomes singularly focused on any new trending product, even if that product is extremely useless or dangerous. The written language of this world is a mostly kanji-free Japanese, with a couple English words thrown in, presumably just for the aesthetic. This city appears to be ruled by a military dictatorship with no apparent heads of state beyond General Nowakak. The military operates with zero oversight and regularly makes rash, dangerous decisions stemming from its apparent lack of accountability to any other governing body. It's unclear how exactly the Protect team is involved with the military, but I'm guessing that they're a paramilitary organization that receives its funding from them. And related to that, this world appears to be engaged in intergalactic warfare that threatens the entire planet, although this is never elaborated upon. Next, the Grim Reaper is real and also a bunny. It is uncertain whether other species have corresponding Reapers. Finally, water seems to have an intoxicating effect in this world. People are compelled to drown their sorrows or overconsume and become rowdy at the aqua bar the same way they would with alcohol in real life. Episode 18, Bunnies Are From Mars. The Protect team is being interviewed for an upcoming mech battle tournament, and Bunny arrives 5 minutes late. He proceeds to completely screw up the interview due to his sponsor, who pays per mention. In the process of finding moments to plug the product, he ends up admitting to cheating and using performance-enhancing drugs, despite neither of those things being true. That, plus Candy beating the stuffing out of him on live TV, shatters their public image. Because of this, the public completely turns its back on the Protect team, and any products supplied to them by sponsorships are confiscated. Candy and Bunny fight about it, and Charlotte brings in a copy of a parody of Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. They both take it at face value and restructure their entire life around maximizing communication, much to each other's mutual annoyance. It ends up escalating their fight severely, and Jesus Christ! Bunny Maloney just put their pet in the oven and turned it on! Seeing how sad their fighting is making Jean-Francois, they force each other to make up, and Stan shows up to mediate with a less deliberately malicious interpretation of the book. But their resentment is still at a boiling point, and they're still fighting each other by the time the mech battle starts. Stan ignores the fact that his hologram isn't capable of holding physical objects for a moment and tases them both to convince them to deploy. The Protect team shows up to the tournament, still deeply unpopular with the audience, and I had a good chuckle over this visual gag where the mech is reading a gigantic version of the self-help book. The Bunny Ganger, with its 3 participants totally out of sync, gets completely thrashed until, inexplicably, a baby arrives in the arena. The Bunny Ganger knocks the Octobot out of the arena, and the baby is saved, until they step on it. But it's just a fake out, and the Gata-style feet of the mech leave the baby unharmed. Manchi blows up the submarine on purpose again. Having now redeemed themselves, Bunny and Candy arrive for another interview where it's revealed that the author of the book they've been referencing is a discredited quack who drove his entire family to madness. Bunny is still per mention sponsored again. This one, while lacking the issues with overtly sexual content like episode 15 had, was still exhausting to watch and felt like it went way longer than its actual runtime. There's not really anything funny or entertaining about watching Bunny and Candy act like they're going through a messy divorce. Also, Pachi is presumed dead until further notice because he did not appear again after getting stuck in the oven. Episode 19, Community Service. We open on a public broadcast announcing the installation of speed monitors on public roads around the city, which are shown to be a little more than disruptive. Interestingly, in this announcement we get our first allusion to a governing body other than the military.
Citizens, your elected government loves you very much, like a parent loves a child.
She also refers to herself as Secretary Octopus, indicating that she is a member of, or even the face of, this supposed elected government. Okay, so I'm gonna have to restructure my appraisal of this city's government a bit. I'll get back to that later. Bunny Maloney, driving like a maniac, gets quite literally slapped with a fine and waxes conspiratorial as he mows through civilians.
Obviously a new government scheme to penalize people for looking unattractive.
Unconcerned with the fines he's racking up, he continues blitzing down the road until the speed monitor breaks. A reporter interviewing him later assumes that he's having a celebrity mental breakdown and begs him to assault the cameraman. Later, they're watching the news and Secretary Octopus invites the general public to call in to vote for Bunny's fate. Freedom, fine, community service, or life in prison, like some kind of extremely high-stakes American Idol. Candy votes prison. DeVilleman wants to vote for execution, but they won't let him. As the title of the episode indicates, community service wins handily, and Bunny is next seen being explained his responsibilities by Louie, who is now his boss. Inexplicably, this show is obsessed with parodying this one line from a Frank Sinatra song.
Now go use that poop scoop, cause you scoop so well!
This is not the first time this has happened, I just didn't think to note it before because I thought it was just a one-time thing.
It's time that you do that voodoo that you do so well!
Bunny Maloney finds a way to get out of his community service by offering to allow Louie to be a superhero while he's stuck doing his service. Except, Louie actually does a great job at it, and so now Bunny has to make good on his promise to let him be a member of the Protect team. Louie instantaneously moves in. Due to Louie's overzealous helpfulness, they keep being sent out on extremely mundane missions, much to Candy and Jean-Francois's dismay. However, his eagerness to help is great for Louie's public image, and he quickly becomes the most famous and popular member of the Protect team. Candy begs Bunny to help them get the Protect team back to their original values.
Doing good deeds and answering every call is not what the Protect team stands for. We're about looking good while wearing sexy costumes.
And they decide to blackmail Secretary Octopus with evidence of her own speeding tickets. In a twist, it turns out that she's the reason that Louie seemed to do a great job at his superhero trial in the first place. She twisted the narrative to make it seem like he was the one who defeated a bunch of Debilman spies, rather than just her hitting them with her car. With the blackmail attempt successful, the Protect team blissfully ignore their responsibilities, and Louie goes back to his janitorial work, and ends up sinking the submarine after being blinded by the speed monitor cameras. This one was easily the best episode yet. It was completely jam-packed with jokes and visual gags, and nearly every single one of them landed. This episode was like early Simpsons level rapid fire at times. The humor was a little edgy, but nothing over the line. If every episode was written like this, my appraisal of this show would be much more glowing. This episode wasn't just snappy and funny, it also has major implications on the show's lore. Also, not a conflict about Bunny and Candy's relationship troubles, which is starting to become the most grating feature of the show for me. Also, as of this episode, Pachi is still dead because he did not appear once. Episode 20 stuck with me. I hope you like Louie, because we've got 2 Louie episodes in a row. He's seen here dangling from a flagpole, loudly reciting his credit card number in front of a large crowd of people as he tries to summon the Protect team for help. Candy and Bunny pass off the responsibility to each other repeatedly, neither of them wanting to take the job. Debilman watches them bicker and decides to use the situation to his advantage. He sends his spies to rescue Louie, therefore enhancing his own public image. Seemingly a thematic continuation of the last episode, Debilman takes advantage of the fact that the Protect team has no interest in helping people in any way that isn't completely self-serving, and starts advertising a hotline that'll send out his Octobot to help anyone who calls. Candy notices that he's stealing their sponsors, and Bunny realizes that they aren't going to be able to maintain their lifestyle at this rate. Not beating the pathologically self-serving allegations, guys. So the Protect team sets out to rescue more people than Debilman can, thereby restoring their public image and keeping their sponsorships on lock. I feel like they're taking it extra slow with this particular deployment sequence. The Protect team helps out by putting every single person they interact with in peril, which unsurprisingly does not help their struggling public image because it frankly looks like they went on a rampage. They're so ludicrously unpopular that a petition to permanently dissolve the Protect team reaches 50,000 signatures. Meanwhile, Debilman's reputation has never been better. Louie calls, crying and apologizing for accidentally taking part in ruining their reputation, but then he claims to have a cunning plan to reverse public opinion. Louie climbs to the top of a suspension bridge tower and the Protect team go in for a staged rescue, which ends up baiting Debilman into violently ejecting a bunch of children from the Octomech to go intercept and rescue Louie first. The Protect team decides to prioritize battling the Octomech, and the whole town gathers to enjoy watching the fight.
Remain calm and stay indoors. Illegal betting is prohibited. Good pay 100A, man.
Hey, on the Protect team.
The Octobot gets thrown across town to land in the most predictable location that it possibly could. Later on, Bunny tries to take credit for the idea that made them popular again, to which Candy reminds him that the one who actually came up with it was... Oh god, they left Louie on the bridge. I didn't think this episode was quite as top-notch as the last one, but it was still pretty great. I think these episodes generally get better with Louie in them, because they give the protagonists something else to do other than bicker with each other, although there was still some of that too. And thank god at some point Pachi must have stopped being dead off screen. Episode 21, Free Pachi. Candy's trying to teach the possibly undead Pachi to learn some tricks. And it just occurred to me that every single video game in this world is played with a combination of a DDR pad and Wii remote. I'm into it. Anyway, Candy is trying to prepare Pachi for the, quote, Artificial Irradiated Mutant Mascot Championship. Is that why he looks like that? Bunny insists that this will never work out because Pachi is too dumb. Debilman concocts a scheme while watching her storm away, and Machi reveals that he's jealous of Pachi and hates being kept as Debilman's pet. Although he may have just said that to hurt his feelings. Candy Bunny decides to turn to animal abuse to get Pachi to be less distracted by their vacuum cleaner, using this Clockwork Orange-like negative association device. Jesus Christ! Between the domestic violence and this, I think Candy really takes the cake for the worst person out of the two of them. However, Pachi remains completely unfazed. Maybe he's made of rubber or something. Candy receives a suspiciously timed advertisement for a pet training class and sends Pachi away to boarding school. Then we get an unexpected bit of Charlotte lore.
When my parents sent me away to Camp Cucamonga, they didn't come get me for months.
Bunny and Jean-Francois hook Ben up to the Clockwork Orange machine. Of course, the boarding school that Candy sent him to was actually De Billaman's submarine. Pachi quickly escapes the cage and causes havoc. Charlotte and Candy head out to the aqua bar to drown her sorrows about sending Pachi away and get water wasted. Bunny hooks himself up to the Clockwork Orange machine. Pachi deploys missiles. Protect team rolls out. Submarine gets sunk. Candy gets her Pachi back. At some point, the Clockwork Orange machine must have scrambled Bunny's brain with Pachi's, because now he's the one obsessed with the vacuum cleaner. This episode felt kind of disorganized and scattered compared to most. Episode 22, Stupid. The city's military dictatorship has installed a new surveillance device, the system targeting unlawful practice and development, or stupid. The system works by targeting people with criminal intentions before they can commit their crimes. It's all very 1984. Bunch of unrelated stuff happens. Pachi steals a pizza. Jean-Francois is tearing it up as usual. Charlotte and Candy are having some girl talk. Bunny hears Candy express her doubts over their relationship. And after choosing to ignore all of the ways that he could hypothetically help out with the chores and housekeeping, he decides that he needs to get her a diamond. An elderly woman misinterprets and tries to give him and Jean-Francois some relationship advice.
You won't make him love you by forcing him to buy you stuff.
They extremely unstealthily sneak their way into the jewelry store, and Candy, spotting them, has such low faith in Bunny that she assumes that he can't be in there to get anything for her. This episode's setup finally comes back into play. By sneaking into the jewelry store, they've triggered the crime warning system, deploying the entire military to intercept. De Billaman seems to have nothing to do with it this time and looks on in amusement. Bunny and Jean-Francois are arrested, along with a bunch of other people who didn't actually have any intention to commit crime. Like the old lady from earlier, the aqua bar robot, Walrus Guy, and Louie. While he's in prison, Bunny Maloney's New York accent gets turned up to the max.
Get off the guy! It's all a stupid mistake. What you in for?
Businessmen, whose names are revealed to be Mark and Ting, are also arrested. Hold on. Mark and Ting, which in French would be Mark et Ting. See what you did there, you sly bastards. Anyway, those two were caught actually committing fraud. Candy loads into the Bunny Ganger solo, and Bunny and the General have a tiresome back and forth who's on first style interaction regarding the machine's name.
That's stupid!
Yes, it's stupid!
Soldiers attempt to arrest Stan's hologram and have a yowie moment. Candy destroys the crime intention scanner, making it overload and accuse every single citizen of Bunnyville, including the entire military, of being guilty. And so, they all put themselves in prison. Bunny and Jean-Francois go free, and the submarine sinks for unrelated reasons. Episode 23, Oh Busta Paradance. Everyone refuses to help Candy bring in the groceries because they're all practicing for a dance marathon, which Jean-Francois is the heavy favorite to win. Later on, Candy points out that if Jean-Francois wins, he'll be leaving them for 2 years, and so they won't be able to use him for help with housework. So they decide to sabotage him. Get my sweet boy away from these two scumbags! Machi is also practicing for the dance contest, but De Billaman is rigging the dance pad to ensure that Jean-Francois wins no matter what. Having noticed that Jean-Francois is the only thing that keeps Bunny and Candy's arguments from going supernova, he decides that getting him out of the picture is the best way to break them up permanently. Bunny goes and installs his own tampering device, which registers every hit as a miss, the opposite of De Billaman's cheating device. Except he's too dumb to realize that he installed it on mat number 16 instead of mat number 91. The military is also practicing for the dance marathon, meanwhile ignoring an oncoming attack. The dance marathon begins. Charlotte is eliminated early due to fundamentally misunderstanding the game's controls.
It's the cowgirl!
See, I told you she was a cow. Candy starts feeling guilty about sabotaging Jean-Francois. Bunny sends Louie out in his knickers to cause a distraction and slyly removes the chip from under Jean-Francois' mat. Little did he know, he just removed De Billaman's assist chip and not the one that he installed. The competition comes down to Jean-Francois and Ben. Jean-Francois on mat 91 and Ben on mat 16. Ben quickly loses due to the sabotage chip kicking in, leaving Jean-Francois to claim the prize. However, Jean-Francois gives the prize to Ben, not wanting to break up the Protect team. Machi sinks the submarine to get back at De Billaman for not letting him compete. Episode 24, Fishing for Trouble. Bunny has to turn down Stan when he comes and offers to let him test a new game system, because he's going on a date with Candy. And he's just generally being a huge bitch about a date that involves going to 2 stores and then to lunch. Bunny pretends that the mech needs some time-sensitive maintenance to get out of the date. Candy doesn't buy it, but he continues his bullshitting by claiming that he got her an expensive piece of jewelry, which is actually just the bracelet from Jean-Francois's cereal box. She throws it on the ground and it gets sucked up by the fish rescue vacuum and subsequently eaten by one of Bunny's fish. Candy rushes to the vet a little too aggressively and then crashes into Louie, having to run the rest of the way to the vet. She gets sidetracked by Charlotte at the aqua bar in the process. Once she gets to the vet, the fish is missing. She runs back to the aqua bar, accusing them of stealing and cooking the fish. Then she, summons the military to deal with it? They aggressively interrogate all the customers, but find nothing and leave. Candy starts to panic, having seemingly killed and then lost Bunny's fish, when Louie's poop truck explodes outside. And among the horrific slop that gets ejected from the truck is Morgan the fish, having been vacuumed up during their collision earlier and the cause of the explosion-inducing blockage. Somehow, despite being trapped in literal feces for the last hour and then exploded, he is unharmed. The Debilman B-plot is that they're celebrating Machi's birthday, and he demands a better present than a squeaky toy submarine and accidentally ends up swallowing it. Debilman proceeds to try to extract it via a series of horrific experiments, which of course sink the submarine. Episode 25, Raucous Caucus. Bunny is hanging out with Jean-Francois, Ben, and presumably Ben's buddies from school when Candy storms in, screaming about how long it just took for her to get to the store and back.
There's a really great way to relieve stress. Take it out on your partner.
This moment really sums up her entire character. This title card hopes that maybe we'll get some more information about Bunnyville's supposed elected government. Candy fantasizes about being mayor and the extremely self-centered policy she'd introduced to control traffic, and Bunny and Candy end up in a pissing contest about which one would be the better mayor.
If you want to be mayor, stop fiddling your taxes, check for madness in the family, and hide those sexual indiscretions.
I was so caught off guard by this joke on my initial viewing that I actually screamed. This is like my scene Harvey Weinstein cameo levels of shock and horror. Like, yeah, I guess kids probably aren't gonna understand that one, but maybe let's not make jokes about covering up assault allegations in your children's cartoon? Again, one of those moments that wouldn't be weird if it was like an Adult Swim or MTV show, but it's not. Anyway, Candy and Bunny are both now threatening to run for mayor. Candy gives a speech expressing her traffic control aspirations, and it seems to flop until her audience plant, Charlotte, starts cheering. Meanwhile, Bunny Maloney calls up the businessmen to back him up on his campaign trail, except they're also backing up Candy at the same time. Machi is also running. Candy has turned their apartment into her campaign headquarters, and Bunny takes over the aqua bar. Bunny deploys the mech on his own and drops his manifesto over the entire city. Not again. Why do they have to lump all the super weird jokes into the same episode?
If I had a nickel for every time I
watched Candy Bunny pole dance,
I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice.
Candy tries to spread her own leaflets around town and ends up crashing the car due to Charlotte's terrible driving. Bunny and Candy beat each other up again, and Machi takes the opportunity to use the footage to make an attack ad. Bunny and Candy kiss and make up. Yeah, me too, buddy. And Machi wins the mayoral election unopposed. This time, Debilman presses the self-destruct button. And I guess it didn't really matter who won the election. Episode 26, Anyo! Candy is accusing Bunny of loving his fish more than her, and Bunny is accusing Candy of loving Pachi more than him, a common refrain among these two. Debilman is preparing for the upcoming mech battle tournament, and him and Machi aggressively trade one-liners. Debilman's planning to steal Pachi again, to which Machi reminds him of a couple episodes ago where that backfired, which means the show has just slightly more than zero continuity. Fun fact, Pachi pills. Debilman's spies inject Pachi with something suspicious, which he appears to immediately die from. Or start to die, I guess. Candy is distraught, nobody else cares. Debilman calls Candy to offer a cure, no strings attached, although he insists that she not tell Bunny about it. The pills are delivered and Pachi is cured. Candy and Bunny are discussing how they're going to bet on the tournament, but then Pachi starts suffering from the injection again. Candy calls Debilman to ask for more pills, and this time he has a condition. Pills in exchange for throwing the match. Candy is extremely shocked and scandalized by this, despite literally just a moment ago suggesting Bunny do that so he can win more money on the bet.
And if your strategy is just about the money, Bunny, then throw the fight and put it on Debilman.
Candy realizes that the fast turnaround of the pill delivery is suspicious, and figures out that Debilman was behind Pachi getting sick. Stan extracts the pain chip that Debilman injected into Pachi, and they head out for the match. If Stan was the primary protagonist of this show, every episode would be resolved in 30 seconds. Somehow this chip quickly gets transferred into a bag of Machi's candy, which he eats. Like other mech tournament episodes, the Octobot gets punched into oblivion, but instead of landing on the submarine and sinking it, Debilitman activates the pain chip, unaware of the switcheroo, and Machi decides to kill himself. So a lot of these episodes that can still be found on YouTube appear to be rips from now deleted YouTube videos uploaded on the Kabillion channel. These must have been in groups of 4, judging by the interspersed end cards, and occasionally the content on these becomes a bit strange.
When Gumby found out he was coming to YouTube, he transformed into a real guy and started shooting hoops. And if you think that's weird, well, you should watch the show. Gumby's a part of YouTube.
We are now about halfway through the series, and I feel like now is as good a time as any to rewind a bit, back from 2009 to 2002, to the year of Bunny Maloney's Flash animated pilot titled The Attack of the Giant Red Octopus, or Pan Pan le Lapin, l'Attaque du Rouge Géant. This short was created by Studio Tanuki, a prolific French Flash animation and game studio, which is a whole other can of worms that I'm not really going to get into today. It's not totally clear whether this short was intended as a TV pilot, or it was just co-opted into one later down the line. The pilot opens on a production card that is clearly reminiscent of the Studio Ghibli logo. The intro introduces all the familiar characters, but with a strikingly different visual aesthetic, and with different names. Bunny Maloney is called Pan Pan le Lapin, Candy is called Rabbi Kawaii, Jean-Francois is given the last name Mappamonde, and Stanuki is called Monsieur Tan, but Debilitman is just Debilitman. For clarity's sake, I'm just going to call them by the names of their main series equivalents. Proto-Debilitman sends out this boppin' red octopus to destroy the town. Jean-Francois is established to enjoy the game that is legally distinct from DDR, and their apartment starts to crumble due to the octopus attack. He rushes to get Bunny and Candy and... oh my god! Okay, so this concept was originally intended to be an adult comedy. Explains a lot. The group gets in the mech just like in the show, but more simplified. Candy appears to break her neck while getting in, and Bunny mocks her for it. They battle the Octobot, Fist of the North Star joke. Candy says she has a special trick to deal with the octopus, Sailor Moon joke. I'm not a big fan of how Candy is treated in this pilot. Bunny calls immigration agents on the octopus, and they beat him up and arrest him. I thought this outro was maybe a Gintama reference, but that doesn't match up with the release timelines. But considering that basically every other aspect of this short was a reference, it might just be something that's going over my head. The Bunny Maloney fandom wiki doesn't cite it as anything, but it also missed the Fist of the North Star reference, so... Episode 27, A Bunny Story. Bunny Maloney is working on his memoir, or rather, pretending to be working on his memoir. Candy comes in and drops the news that the publishers are expecting a finished manuscript by tomorrow. Then she checks on his progress and finds out that he has a whopping 0 words written. Bunny resignedly says that he'll just have to cancel the contract and return the money that he got, but for once Candy is the one spending money that she's not entitled to. Debilitman watches on, scorned that Bunny got a publishing deal due to being a celebrity, while his hundreds of dubiously titled finished manuscripts go unread.
101 cruel and unusual punishments. And oh yes, candy love.
Bunny works late into the night, getting absolutely nothing accomplished. Debilitman reads aloud his Candy fanfiction.
Her lips embraced his inflamed proboscis.
Machi gives it to the spies to use as toilet paper. Bunny wakes Candy and asks her for help. She rejects him, and so he asks Jean-Francois instead. He attempts to have him transcribe his speech, and... doesn't this guy only know 2 words? He is, in fact, not any more eloquent on paper. The businessmen show up. Candy presents Jean-Francois' manuscript, and Bunny begs for forgiveness. And they laugh and reveal that what they meant was that they were expecting a finished manuscript from the ghostwriter, not from Bunny. At the book signing later, they realize that it's a bunch of fabricated, exploitative drivel and an overt character assassination of the entire Protect team.
Oh, what a dozen cheerleaders! I wish.
Debilitman accidentally does them a favor by collecting and shredding every copy in the city. Upon realizing this, he panics and presses that stupid button. Episode 28, Stan's Perfect Match. Candy decides that Stan needs a girlfriend. I think we were overdue for a Stan episode, in my opinion. He's one of my favorite characters. What can I say, I'm a sucker for the hologram guy character trope. Bunny wonders if she's planning to set him up with Charlotte, to which she responds,
I wouldn't do that to a friend.
She signs him up for a dating site. Keep in mind that this was back when dating sites and apps were kind of stigmatized instead of the default way to meet people to date, so that's why everybody thinks this is so funny. Turns out the person operating the dating site was none other than Debilitman, who demands Machi find a match for Stan who they can pay off to sabotage him. Back at home, Stan matches with Charlotte, whose profile is just thirst traps. Real classy, guys. Don't worry, he got a second match. They don't exactly show what it is that they're reacting to, but it's definitely heavily implied to be an unsolicited pic. Again, jokes that would be funny if this show wasn't for 10-year-olds. Machi finds a sexy tanuki, meaning basically Stan with eyelashes and breasts, and Stan quickly changes his opinion of the website. Stan arrives for a date with a shinuki whose name is Blaireau. Well, kind of. He decided to show up in hologram form. The general and the sailor guy realize that they've been catfishing each other, but they just decide to accept it and indulge in some old man yowie. You know what? I like it when the show does gay jokes. I think it's fun. Blaireau is disappointed that he didn't show up in person, and so Candy offers to take them to the Protect Team base. Blaireau is seriously put off by how much of a geek he is, but has to put up with it for the sake of getting paid. While she's there, she sneaks a bunch of photographs with her concealed camera, which transmit directly to Debillaman's lair. Bunny and Candy discover the ruse, steal the lipstick camera, and send Debillaman a bunch of pics of Bunny's ass. Blaireau leaves the date abruptly, and Candy and Bunny try to mitigate Stan's heartbreak by making it seem like she was a fugitive on the run. The submarine sinks in this episode due to Debillaman receiving a letter bomb, and I'm genuinely not sure who sent it. I don't think Stan ever figured out the ruse, so maybe it was Bunny? Maybe even Blaireau? Unclear. Episode 29, The Wrong Diagnosis. With this episode, we enter Le Point de Non-Retour, with most of the episodes going forward being available only in French. Wait, hold on, I need to get my Lost Media voice on. From this point on, only 5 of the 23 remaining episodes have the English dub preserved, making the remainder of them Lost Media. What happened to these episodes? Well, Kabillion is an on-demand channel, making it challenging to preserve these episodes via normal means, since on-demand shows are unable to be recorded, unlike in France, where the show aired on normal TV stations. Therefore, most of the preserved English episodes were taken directly from the Kabillion YouTube channel, which has since deleted any trace of the show due to being an embarrassment to the network for being too horny. That's enough of that. So this episode begins with an advertisement for Stan's new automated medical booths. The Protect Team is pissed off because they feel excluded, or perhaps they just want a cut of the profits. The hive mind populace of Bunnyville all want in on this new invention, which ends up getting held up by Louie for hours due to him working out his persecution complex. I don't know, Louie. I think you might just actually be persecuted. The Protect Team shows up to advertise their own products to divert some of the attention to themselves. Debillaman sends out his spies to take pictures of the medical booth mechanism so he can start producing cheap replicas. Bunny cuts the line to try the machine out himself and gets diagnosed with being 6 weeks pregnant. That's right, folks. It's an Mpreg episode. He seems strangely enthusiastic about all this. Back at home, Bunny is being doted on by Jean-Francois and Stan, while Candy is pretty damn sure that Bunny isn't actually pregnant. Stan reveals that he's just playing along. Plus, he's not particularly eager to admit that one of his booths messed up a diagnosis. Bunny practices scoring 3-pointers with a baby doll. Charlotte is into Mpreg. Candy demands that they go on what is basically Dr. Phil to talk it out. Everyone, believing Bunny is actually pregnant, gets on his side instantly. Plot twist, the diagnosis was actually for the woman he kicked out of the booth as he was cutting in line. Debillaman shows up to disparage Stan's medical booths for making such a serious error and promote his own, after which he is ejected directly into that damn button again. How many times did they rebuild the submarine? They haven't thought about removing that thing yet, or at least putting a little glass on top of it? Bunny accepts the fact that he is not impregnant and makes up with Candy. Episode 30, Charity. We're back in English again for now. Charlotte and Candy are going around collecting money for road signs for the blind and decide to change courses to anti-animal cruelty once they realize that nobody's giving them any money. They start storming the town like a duo of robbers, and I guess kittens look like this in this world? They try to extort money from the military, but it turns out that the whole institution is flat broke. And the reason why? Noah Cat got fat and lost a game of Pong, and so they revoked the military's entire budget. No, I'm serious.
Noah Cack is getting kind of flabby, and from the look of you, that's not just a metaphor. So we're stripping you of your budget, fatso.
Okay, yeah, this is really overhauling my entire assumption about how the Bunnyville government works. Noah Cack decides to register the military as a charity to collect donations from the citizens. Nobody falls for it until one of the soldiers suggests that they get a celebrity representative.
But as no self-respecting celebrity will have anything to do with us, that only leaves...
Bunny gets a call from Noah Cack and is instantly swayed. We get an abridged transformation sequence before Bunny loads into a tank to threaten the population into donating. Candy calls them out for having no fuel or ammunition, which incites a riot. Once they run away, Debillaman orders his spies to follow the tank. Bunny records a charity record which just objectively sucks so much that even Louie hates it. Debiloman remotely records it and blasts it across the entire city, inciting another riot. As Secretary Octopus calls to beg Candy to get the Protect team to handle the riot, Candy says she won't budge until the government reverses the decision to defund the military. It works. The Zeppelin blasting the shitty music lands in a predictable location. This episode was another really strong one. The humor was just so off the wall, and some of the one-liners are really excellent. When this show is at its strongest, it kind of reminds me of Invader Zim in its snarkiness and total absurdity. And another theme in these episodes that I really like, it has some major implication on the lore of this world. What can I say, I love learning the details of this weird little fascist society they've got going on. Episode 31, Sick Bunny. Candy is planning a vacation getaway, and Bunny concocts a plan to fake sick right before she leaves so he can go to a Bunny Babes concert with Jean-Francois. Except Candy wants to do the same thing, except with Charlotte, just by leaving him while they're on vacation instead. Bunny covers himself in fake chickenpox marks, but Candy quickly finds the lipstick that he used to do it and figures out the scheme. Meanwhile, Debiloman is convinced by Bunny's ruse and celebrates his illness, spilling a vial of noxious liquid and making himself sick in the process. Candy ties up Jean-Francois and demands that he fess up about Bunny's plans under the threat of running his VR goggles through the washing machine, making him cry, for which she deserves 10 million years in hell. Jean-Francois quite literally coughs up the truth, and so Candy decides to claim that he's staying home from vacation to take care of him and threatens to give him an intense medical examination. Bunny decides to just drug her with sleeping pills, but not before he accidentally pulls out boner pills instead. Quality children's programming. Jean-Francois desperately tries to convince him to not roofie his girlfriend, which he ignores. Candy gives him the medical exam that she threatened, and he suddenly feels a lot better after she pulls out a rectal probe. I'm not exactly sure what this thing is supposed to be, but it looks a lot like a turkey baster. The clock chimes the hour and Candy suddenly runs off, remembering that she needs to tell Charlotte to call off her side of the plan. Candy calls the wrong phone, and so Charlotte calls Bunny to tell him that their apartment is flooded. Except, Bunny's still at the apartment. Candy, being an equally if not more terrible person than Bunny is, also prepares him a drug to drink. They both drink each other's spiked smoothies unaware and both pass out on the floor. Debiloman lands on that damn button again. Charlotte and Jean-Francois come back from the concert having had a great time as Candy and Bunny wake up from their involuntary naps. This episode is a great illustration of how completely busted Candy and Bunny's dynamic is. Even when they both have the exact same goal, they're completely unwilling to admit to it because they just assume that their goals are opposed no matter what. This whole episode could have been avoided by Bunny being like, "Hey, can we do our vacation some other time? I kind of want to go to this concert with Jean-Francois." And then Candy would be like, "Oh, actually, I kind of wanted to go to that with Charlotte. Yeah, let's do it some other time." And then both of them would just go separately and have a great time without having to slip each other drugs. But no. Episode 32, Lost and Found. Candy cleans off the mech while Stan and Bunny are messing around. She falls off the top all the way to the ground, and Bunny simply cannot be bothered. The next day when she wakes up, she has no idea who Bunny is, or who Jean-Francois is, and she can't even remember that her name is Candy. Debiloman is thrilled, and extrapolating that she also probably forgot that they're enemies, thinks this is the perfect opportunity to insert himself into her life. Bunny takes her around the apartment, explaining things about their life together in hopes to jog her memory, but she doesn't believe that she'd ever willingly date a loser like him. Candy demands that he move out, but she instinctually trusts Jean-Francois because he's perfect. Bunny runs into her later with Charlotte in tow. Charlotte attempts to remind her that they're best friends and share everything, including Bunny. Candy tells her that she can keep him and drives off. Candy rolls up to the Aqua Bar and immediately starts hitting on General Noakak because she has a thing for guys in uniform. This gives Bunny an idea. He lies that Debiloman is planning to attack the military headquarters, which both leads Noakak to believe that Candy's interest in him is just a ruse to cause a distraction, and Candy to see Bunny in his uniform, which reminded her of why she's attracted to him in the first place. Her memory is unlocked for good once she sees Debiloman's submarine and knows instinctually to blow it up, along with the rest of the marina. But we get this cute little dance animation again, so all is well. Episode 33, It's All in the Cards. Bunny accidentally smashes Candy's hand mirror when he's messing around with a soccer ball inside, which Candy asserts is going to bring him bad luck. A series of bad things starts happening to him, which culminates in him getting hit by a car. After this experience, Bunny suddenly becomes extremely superstitious and starts taking to divination, much to the annoyance of Candy, who thinks he ought to be preparing for the mech tournament instead. Debiloman starts plotting something that the auto-translator completely failed to elucidate for me. All I know is that Machi predicts the submarine is going to sink again, which is a safe bet. Sudden skip to the tournament battle, and Bunny is still way too distracted, attempting a pendulum reading with a human's foot instead of taking a shot. That's pretty good. Meanwhile, they get completely trounced and actually lose the mech battle tournament for the first time in the series. Afterwards, Bunny is confronted by the others, but has no interest in giving up his new rituals because he believes he got a message from God. He holes up in his sanctuary space and refuses to break his meditation until Stan shows up and claims that Candy is being attacked by Debilman, and Bunny finally snaps out of his obsession and goes to save Candy, who is really just standing next to the submarine of her own volition. Later on, when Bunny and Candy are being all affectionate with each other, Stan shows up and drops the news that the kidnapping was all made up. Episode 34, Heaven Sent. Candy is upset about Bunny gaming late into the night instead of going to bed with her, and so she decides to murder him with an axe. How did I get here? This is not my beautiful wife. Bunny, who's bummed out from Candy going all murder mode on him, requests a love potion from Stan, which he obliges. It's a spray, and Stan warns him that only a couple drops is enough and not to overdo it. Debilman is also concocting his own bunny girl attracting spray, which is so noxious that it causes him to be attacked by flies. Bunny completely disregards Stan's advice and over-applies the spray, giving us a bunch of furry bait scenes. No! Not this again! No! Stop it! Stop it! Stop it!
If I had a nickel for every time I
watched Candy Bunny pole dance,
I'd have
3
nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened
thrice. Outside the room, Candy notices a gross smell and is totally disgusted when she encounters Bunny. But Pachi isn't. Well, that could have been worse. Candy kicks him to the curb. When Stan asks what happened, Bunny admits to using the whole bottle, which Stan says was a monumental fuck-up. Or at least that's what the translator claims that he said, and you know, it works in context. In reality, it was probably more gently worded than that, maybe? Bunny gets chased by hordes of animals through the city, and Noah Cack deploys the army in response and is accidentally racist against octopus people while making an analogy, after which he's forced into sensitivity training by Secretary Octopus. Bunny crashes his car and runs into the Aqua Bar, and I bet $5 that we're about to have a horny Charlotte moment.
Oh, Bunny! Quel délicieux parfum! Viens voir maman, mon gros loup!
Wow, who could have seen that coming? I will be collecting all your $5 on patreon.com/LeighSpeaks. Now being pursued by a horde of animals and Charlotte, Bunny escapes with a conveniently timed Louis appearance. Bunny gets some wise two-word advice from Jean-Francois, which causes her to forgive Bunny. As two groups of crazed animals converge, Louis' truck goes careening off a bridge, and at the same time military jets fire at the truck, which all miss and hit Debilman's submarine instead. Bunny and Candy make up, although she still refuses to sleep with him due to the fact that he got sick from his unexpected ocean dive. I think it's episodes like this that emphasize Bunny Maloney's target audience problems the most for me, because I feel like if this episode leaned full on into unapologetic raunchy humor, it would have been hilarious. But since the show is technically for kids, they can't actually do that, and so it's mostly just toothless with a couple really uncomfortable moments sprinkled in. I just want the show to be one or the other. No, actually, I just want it to be an adult comedy. I want them to be able to make jokes without having to write in plausible deniability that they're talking about something else. Now that we're about 2/3 of our way through these episodes, let's take another Facts We Know About Bunny Maloney universe break. I mentioned how episode 19, Community Service, had substantial implications on the show's lore, so let's get into that now. So in episode 19, we get our first allusion to the actual governing body of Bunnyville. So what do we know about these guys? They claim to be elected. The only known member is Secretary Octopus, which means that the government controls the media. Secretary Octopus herself seems to have wide-reaching power and doesn't necessarily need to consult anyone else to enact policy changes. It is entirely possible that she could be the city's only government official, although there isn't any strong proof in favor or against this. The government seems to have the ability to enact far-reaching and aggressive policy changes with little or no civilian input or oversight. The decisions made by this government seem to have two primary motivating factors. 1, profit, and 2, public image. For example, the decision to install the network of traffic cameras was motivated by factor 1, profit, as it would collect a hefty amount of fines from speeding citizens. But the decision to discontinue them was motivated by factor 2, public image, as Secretary Octopus herself was caught in a traffic violation and her hasty cover-up was about to be exposed. Speaking of Secretary Octopus, she is clearly well versed in the art of the cover-up.
And hide those sexual indiscretions!
Now there's a wide array of things that this could be hypothetically referring to, ranging from relatively innocuous, like covering up an embarrassing affair, to actual cover-ups of felony assault. With her joking about it so flippantly, I think it's safe to assume that she has either orchestrated one of these cover-ups herself or has participated in them for the benefit of her political peers. Episode 30 reveals that the military is not the all-powerful force in Bunnyville that I had previously assumed. Although all the decisions made by NOACAC seem to have no government oversight, the military would still be nothing about the financial support of the government, which is suddenly revoked in episode 30 due to the military no longer acting in service of the government's public image. Speaking of attractiveness-based decision-making, that seems to be the whole MO of the Protect team, to look good, seem powerful, and do as little work as possible to still maintain a positive relationship with the civilian population. They're entirely a propaganda tool with very little interest in saving, defending, or doing basically any work for the good of society. This makes me wonder if Debiloman serves a similar role just on the opposite side, because that would make it appear to the average layperson that Bunnyville's offensive and defensive capabilities are robust and impressive, without them ever actually having to do anything that would put themselves in danger. That would be interesting, and it would also explain why Debiloman is never sent to prison, but it's more of a wouldn't that be cool type thing than a genuine theory. How exactly the Protect team fits into the structure of Bunnyville society is still extremely ambiguous. They seem to operate with the approval of both the government and the military, but are not necessarily funded by either of them, instead relying on the support of private sponsorships. The mech itself stands mission control base, and any hypothetical maintenance the mech would need, I guess I just have to hand wave off because it's really unlikely that the cost of those things were taken into consideration by the show's creators. This world's concept of pets is also pretty unique. Usually in shows with anthro-animal characters, you just kind of have to accept that there's animals and then there's human animals. This show avoids that by having the pets be indeterminate mutant blob things of dubious origin. These things are referred to in canon as both dogs and cats, but are clearly unrelated to any real-world conception of those things. It's also notable how there's no established anthro dogs or cats, so that conflict wouldn't necessarily exist in the first place. However, there are both birds and marine wildlife, so this isn't a totally creatureless society. And finally, Charlotte and Bunny definitely have a side thing going on. You think he has enough of a backbone to resist that thirsty cow? He's more of a front bone than a backbone kind of guy. Episode 35, Hypochondriac. Bunny Maloney wakes up and announces that he's going to die. And that's the end of the series. If you liked this video... Anyway, he gets up and tells Candy that he's going to die, to which she basically responds, "Shut the fuck up," and chalks it up to the way that guys act when they get sick. Candy demands that he go to a doctor. Debiloman is also sick, and Machi insists that he's going to die just to mess with him. Candy boots him out of the travel pod and ditches him to go shopping. Bunny runs into Louie, who's the same kind of sick that he is, and Bunny insists that he go to the doctor in his stead and call him later with a diagnosis. Louie simps too hard for Bunny to say no. Machi prepares Debiloman a bath with relaxing essential oils, essential radioactive sludge. Louie calls the Maloney residents to let him know that the illness is just a mild 24-hour bug that will be over the next day, but Candy is the one to receive this information, and her suspicion is confirmed that Bunny has been playing up his symptoms. To get back at him, she instead communicates that Louie told her that he has 24 hours to live. Bunny, genuinely under the impression that he's about to die, goes and gives his final goodbyes to everyone, much to their disgust due to his stank breath. Although Candy was planning to tell him that she was just kidding after a few minutes, since he's piling on the romance and affection, she decides to keep quiet about it for a moment longer. Unfortunately for her, as she's going to the bathroom, Bunny runs into Louie, who has no idea that Bunny has been told he's going to die. And therefore, Bunny decides to fake his own death, covering himself in tomato sauce to make it seem like he's exploded into blood. Candy cries that it was all her fault until Bunny reveals that it was just a prank. Debiloman, having accepted his own death, decides to just kill himself and get it over with. Jesus. Bunny and Candy arrive back at home, arguing about which one is the worst person. And guess what, guys? It's both of you. Episode 36, The Good, the Bad, and the Cookie. We're back in English, if only for a moment. Bunny and Jean-Francois are getting wasted off carrot juice, and Candy made cookies. For some reason, this episode has the English audio in very poor quality and the French visuals. Candy realizes that her cookies are good enough to force people to do her bidding and instantly exploits this. Charlotte comes up with the idea of turning it into a business, which Candy agrees to do after she realized how much money she could make. Candy sends the others out to distribute samples and get the population addicted. The business booms and Candy turns into an absolute tyrant. The businessmen offer Candy a deal to spread out the chain of production, which she heartily agrees to. Bunny cries at home about how Candy hasn't been home in weeks. Even Debiloman is so addicted to the cookies that he turns away from villainy.
Get the industrial tire pump! I need a bigger belly!
No! As she's visiting, Bunny decides to ruin a batch of the secret ingredient by loading it up with hot sauce because he's the kind of person who can't allow his partner to be any more successful than he is. She appears on what I suppose is the only talk show that exists in this universe to debut her new flavor. The batch has been tainted, and afterwards, Candy's company completely tanks. Candy blames Debiloman. Bunny then admits to sabotaging the recipe and is presumably killed. Episode 37, Nanny State. Secretary Octopus announces that she's giving herself a raise, and also that she's enacting a military-sponsored health and fitness program. Bunny disregards this and continues eating burgers. Too bad for him, the general and his soldiers barge in and hold him at gunpoint, asserting that Bunny is being a terrible role model and that he needs to participate in this new government health initiative. Meanwhile, the military has forcibly shut down every fast food restaurant, is forcing citizens to run by chasing them around with tanks, and targeting junk food eaters with missiles. Bunny decides to stage a counter-campaign. Candy refuses to participate, so she's asked to design some Soviet-style propaganda posters instead. Bunny, Jean-Francois, and Charlotte go around calling for the citizens to revolt against the military, inspiring massive unrest. Noakak promises to destroy the insurrection and sends out his typical ludicrous forces. Debilumin Zeppelin pulls up and suggests a competition. Whichever representative can win a race across the bridge gets to continue their campaign. This is, of course, a trap. Bunny is extremely out of shape and is basically doomed, but he agrees to do it anyway, egged on by the cheering crowd. Noakak supplies his representative with performance-enhancing drugs. Fortunately for Bunny, this makes the soldier extremely fast but also completely unable to control the direction of his movements, and so he goes flying off the bridge. Lachi presses the self-destruct button for reasons I failed to comprehend. Back at home, Bunny leads a burger-based exercise class. Episode 38, Business as Usual. Pachi jumps on Candy's computer as she's day trading, causing her to invest heavily on a stock that immediately crashes, rendering her penniless. And since Candy is the only one who actually makes money of the three of them, that means they're all suddenly broke. They decide to get on the Saviors for Hire grind and save Louis, who is inexplicably imperiled as usual. As his truck is about to fall off a bridge, they demand he pay up first, and so he falls into the shark-infested water. The Protect team quickly becomes extremely unpopular. Stan brings in the businessmen for a PR intervention. They proposed a line of licensed toys, but their business partner would be Debilumin. The businessmen argue that if the two of them try to put their past behind them, it'll create a great narrative for the public to latch onto. They plan to stage a fake laser attack on Bunnyville that would boost both of their reputations, but Debilumin decides to make it a real attack instead. Bunny's shining ass reflects the laser back at Debilumin's satellite, which comes crashing down to Earth in an extremely predictable location. When Bunny was hit by the laser, he dropped the toy that he was holding, making Noakak think that they've discovered a miniaturization ray, and somehow they end up getting paid handsomely for this. The end? Episode 39, Passport to Bunnyvania. Time for another political unrest episode, truly the most French episodes of them all. Candy is upset about how much she has to pay in taxes. Since she's on the hook for all of Bunny's expenses, she threatens to sell his aquarium to pay it off. Bunny decides to solve this problem by declaring independence. That's right, folks, it's an episode about the Protect team becoming sovereign citizens. He gets asked why he's doing this on live TV and openly admits that it's because he wants to dodge taxes. The auto subtitles consistently interpret Bunnyvania as Bolivia. Machi makes a bet with Debilumin that if Bunny's independent nation survives the week, then he'll be allowed to go free. And if it doesn't, he'll stay and stop being mean. Debilumin takes the bet. I really like this visual gag where his nose breaks the black borders. Secretary Octopus and Noakak's military conspire to crush the rebellion. At first, the public is largely on their side, but as soon as it's announced that everybody else's taxes are going to be raised as a punishment for the Maloney household refusing to pay, public sentiment immediately shifts. Candy, upset about Charlotte being mistreated over expressing loyalty to her, goes to file a complaint at the Bunnyville Town Hall. Except, to her surprise, the space directly outside their apartment has turned into a closed and heavily armed border. Charlotte attempts to enter but is prevented by a soldier, who she causes to flee by hitting on him. And then I think she gets hit on by a woman, and then she flees. Charlotte is homophobic, like literally running and screaming homophobic. Candy starts to get less optimistic about this whole independent nation thing when she realizes that they're basically on house arrest. Bunny reminds everyone that they have an alternate way to leave, but the military took that into account too. And then all their utilities get cut off. Stan shows up announcing that he refuses to support them and that Louis is going to be the new manager of the Protect team if they don't give this up, and changes Bunny's mind immediately. They sign a treaty with Noakak and collect their new tax bill, now with severe penalties and late fees. Machi refuses to accept that he lost the bet and does you know what. In the final scene, Bunny and Candy are prevented from having to sell everything that they own due to the businessmen showing up and buying the IP rights to the nation of Bunnyvania. Episode 40, Cold Turkey. We're back in English for 2 whole episodes in a row. Bunny is going through junk food withdrawal, and so when Jean-Francois comes back with a pizza, Candy chucks it in the trash, telling him that he needs to quit for good and threatens to break up with him if he doesn't. This feels like a pretty hollow threat considering we're 40 episodes of I Hate My Wife jokes in and they're still together. They start attempting to 12-step Bunny, and Charlotte rolls up with an announcement.
Guess who's on the world's best anti-addiction program? Whether it's junk food or men, we addicts all have the same,
She is canonically in treatment for sex addiction. Anyway, she starts trying to parrot what she learned in therapy, but is a bit too dumb to understand what they've actually told her. And this whole sequence has the stank of puns that worked better in the show's original language being forced into English.
And what we need are totally clean socks.
Do you mean a total detox?
They try to make him drink a soy and wheatgrass shake.
It cleanses out the system.
No, that's what this is for.
Sorry, I just needed a quick mental health break before I lose it for good. Anyway, detox montage. After a week of being clean, Candy leaves him alone with Jean-Francois to go to the grocery store, and Bunny begs him to unlock the refrigerator. De Billaman decides to exploit Bunny's weakness and overload him with opportunities to eat junk food. Bunny immediately caves once he sees it, but Louie intervenes, destroying the buffet before Bunny has a chance to partake. De Billaman airdrops even more junk food, and Stan summons the rest of the Protect team, equipped with a special junk food sucking vacuum gun, preventing Bunny's relapse. Maloney suggests that they just take the easy route and deliver a pizza to Bunny's apartment, but he's too much of a pizza junkie himself to allow De Billaman to take one from his stash. Bunny leaves, and Candy commands Jean-Francois to follow him. They end up at the harbor, where he meets the businessman in an obvious drug deal parody and gets busted. He gets locked in his room to ride out the rest of his withdrawal. Maloney commits murder-suicide. It seems like Bunny has kicked the habit for good, but no. As soon as their backs are turned, he's back on his bullshit. Episode 41, Think Extinct. And now something that I never, ever thought I would have to say in front of a kids' cartoon episode. Content warning for implications of sexual violence. Bunny and Candy are watching TV when a special comes on about a newly discovered species from the Amazon rainforest, who looks awfully familiar. Jean-Francois sees this and is shocked. Candy calls the researchers who discovered the Jean Francois and tells them that they have another specimen. Candy thinks the two of them need to meet and have babies to ensure the survival of their species. This is getting into some wild fanfiction territory, and I'm not pleased about it. The female has been forcibly captured, which feels a lot less like animal conservation and a lot more like chattel slavery. De Billaman decides that he wants to kill her and mount her on his wall. I don't know, I just think this feels kind of out of character. I feel like Trophy Hunter doesn't necessarily mesh with his established personality. Like, I guess it aligns with the fact that he's just generally a dick, but he doesn't seem like the variety of dick who would have a wall of taxidermied animal heads. Back to the episode. Candy is giving Jean-Francois the sex talk. Actually, can we go back to De Billaman? Here, I have a list of 10 reasons why De Billaman would not be a trophy hunter. First, bro has no hobbies other than drooling over Candy and trying to sabotage Bunny. Second, his... Hold on, I'm getting a call. Yeah? Yeah, okay. Okay. Bye-bye. Sorry, that was my producer reminding me that if I don't get on with it, they're going to confiscate my insulin. Anyway, Candy is giving Jean-Francois the sex talk, except inexplicably she's using fish as an example.
And the daddy fish sprays them with his special daddy spray. And a few weeks later, some babies are born.
They wrote in a throwaway visual gag about fish. This episode isn't gonna get any easier to deal with, is it? So Candy wants the two to mate so a species doesn't go extinct, and Bunny's only in on it for the promise of a free car. Candy gives him a rundown on Bunny sex, which is implied to be extremely graphic, and Jean-Francois starts screaming. "You and I are in this together, buddy!" He goes and hides in the bathtub. Note the graphic of two cartoon bunnies screwing. They're really channeling the pilot here. Candy gets annoyed with Bunny and threatens to shoot him with a gun. Why not? Who cares? Bunny calls the conservationists and tells them that Jean-Francois is ready to mate with the female, but his claim is ruined by how loudly he's crying in the background. This episode is dark, man! Like, this is rough territory even for adult comedy. Bunny goes into the bathroom after he notices that he's being ignored and discovers that Jean-Francois has escaped, the crying sound coming from a tape recorder. Bunny and Candy are determined to go find him because, you know, they want to pimp out their friend to win a free car. The act of which will, by the way, be broadcast on live TV. Strangely out of character, De Billaman has to be reminded that he's not allowed to say the word sex.
You know, before they, well, you know,
They milk this joke for a while with various characters. The captive female is extremely distraught. And like, I don't know about you, but this episode is just upsetting. Like, usually my complaints about the inappropriate content in the series hinge on, this is over the line for its target audience, but would be funny or at least acceptable for an older audience. But not this one. This one is just f***ed up and upsetting in a way that I also wouldn't appreciate in an adult comedy. They find Jean-Francois and drop him off at the meeting point against his will. They bring out the box with the captive female.
It'll all be over in seconds.
You should know.
The female is finally released, and they're not on the same size scale at all. She's only about as tall as his knees. Plus, the car that Bunny would have won is her size as well. She drives off in it as soon as she sees Debiluman's spies start to approach. She seems to have been captured, but once the containment cube opens so Debiluman can shoot her to death, it's revealed that she filled it with dynamite and is still free. At least she had a good ending. Back at the Maloney residence, Candy continues her lesson.
So then, number 4.
I assume I'd probably be horrified again like I've been for this entire episode, except that I didn't understand this joke even slightly. This episode was horrific, man. Just completely dark and twisted. It didn't feel funny, it felt nightmarish. It's like kind of so horrific that any Bunny and Jean-Francois friendship moments from here on out are going to feel pretty much invalidated because like, hey man, remember when he tried to force you to mate with this captive woman against your will just so he could win a free car? This episode was both relentlessly perverted and relentlessly mean-spirited and is, in my opinion, the absolute worst episode of the show we've seen yet. Handily passing my previous least favorite episode, The Dispense Sense 9000, which was also another Make Jean-Francois Miserable episode. Why do they make these? This was genuinely brutal to get through. Usually when they portray Jean-Francois as this kind of ambiguous half-person, half-pet, it's in a cute way, like the fact that he eats out of a doggy bowl. This episode ends up examining that dissonance in a way that is completely horrific and not at all in service of the comedy. Episode 42, Rabbit vs. Rabbit. Bunny takes Candy out to dinner, and Candy, finding a ring in her jello, thinks he's proposing. But no, the ring was just the waiterbot's loose washer, and Bunny invited her to dinner to announce that he intends to play video games non-stop until he can be the first ever person to beat a certain level, and so he's backing out on their plans to go on vacation. Candy has had enough and breaks up with him, thank God, although unfortunately it's obvious that these losers will be back together again by the end of the episode. They fight over which one gets to keep the apartment, and they end up doing the sitcom thing where they paint a dividing line to denote who gets to go where. Then they fight over Jean-Francois until he eventually gets fed up and leaves. Debiluman takes credit for them breaking up despite having nothing to do with it, and notes that it's great timing for them to be in disarray because the mech tournament is coming up. More divided house shenanigans. Stan reminds them that they need to make up before the tournament, and if they don't, then one of them is going to need to drop out, or else their infighting will surely lead them to fail. It comes down to a coin flip. Bunny wins and he sets out to battle solo. Debiluman calls Candy and asks if she's pissed off enough to fight against him. She agrees and pilots the Octomech. As the battle begins, Jean-Francois suddenly Akira slides onto the stage and begs them to make up. They do, much to the annoyance of the crowd. Bunny and Candy go and blow the submarine up for old time's sake. Episode 43, The D Fix-It-Up. The Maloney residence is having some plumbing issues. Stan attempts to explain how to fix it, but can't turn his technical jargon off. Candy's upset that Bunny won't just call a plumber. Bunny explodes everything, and Candy threatens no sex for a month if he doesn't get everything cleaned up by the end of the day.
You have 2 hours to get this sorted, or there's no hippity-dippity for a month!
You know, if you have the kind of audience demographic that means you're not allowed to actually say the word sex, maybe you shouldn't be alluding to sex as often as you possibly can. Machi is upset about his and Debiluman's ineffectiveness as a comedy duo. Debiluman decides to unretire an old, extremely useless, and dangerous product of his in order to sabotage Bunny's repair attempt. Bunny falls hook, line, and sinker for the bait and doesn't even find it suspicious when it arrives before he even gives his address. And yet, everything blows up again, who knew? Candy calls them and says that they have 10 minutes. Inexplicable transformation sequence. I don't know how the mech is supposed to help with this. Candy arrives home to find the apartment in much worse shape than it was before. Stan points out that the device he used was Debiluman branded, and Bunny goes to blow up the submarine, using the device to make Debiluman's Octomech turn against him. They get back and clean the apartment as quickly as possible, only for Charlotte to show up with a device that she found washed up in the harbor. This was the final English episode, so it is going to be French only from here on out. Episode 44, We Come in Peace. This episode has an unusual and slightly confusing framing device, with everything presented as a series of flashbacks as the various characters explain themselves to this light orb alien. Bunny and Jean-Francois are watching curling on TV and decide to throw Pachi into the freezer and use him as a curling stone. Candy is not amused. Not like she hasn't done worse. Stan shows up and announces that he's seen a UFO. He shows them the footage, but Bunny doesn't believe him. Candy and Stan are both mad at him now, so they team up to play a prank. The military is also made aware of the UFO, and it seems like they fumbled their response to alien invaders in the past. Stan and Candy make a holographic rabbit alien appear in Bunny's bedroom, demanding that he warn the public that aliens are coming. He obliges, and word quickly spreads, except the message ends up getting corrupted into an announcement of an impending barbecue cookout, and my grasp on the French language is a bit too tenuous to understand how this came to be. The rumor ends up reaching Noakak, who somehow translates it back to its original meaning. Tons of people show up for the arrival of the alien/barbecue party, including the entire military. Much to Stan and Candy's shock, the UFO does actually show up. Except it's just Debilumin's heavily irradiated Zeppelin. And Candy decides to show up since humiliating Debilumin is a higher priority than humiliating Bunny. Meanwhile, Machi can't help but press the big shiny red button on Debilumin's newly installed nuclear power energy station. The mech shows up in light orb form to make it seem like aliens really did visit, and Bunny, Candy, and Noakak finish up their interview with the real aliens, and I have no idea when they're supposed to have met. The aliens agree that there is no intelligent life on the planet and leave. I don't know if it's just a language barrier issue, but I kind of struggled to understand what was going on here. Episode 45, Dead Bunny. Bunny Maloney is dead. They're having a funeral, Jean-Francois is mourning, his ashes get exploded, Debilumin's having a party. Except that everyone just assumed that he died, and Bunny went along with it. Flashback to the circumstances that caused this current situation, where everybody thought that he got exploded. Bunny tries to call some people to explain that he didn't really die, but nobody believes him. And when Candy tries to explain that he's still alive, everybody just thinks she's in denial. Candy suddenly becomes extremely interested in continuing the ruse once she realizes she's entitled to a substantial life insurance payout. It turns out that Debilumin is in actual denial that Bunny is dead, as his entire life purpose basically goes out the window if he's not around anymore. Candy decides to leverage her so-called grief in order to boost her public image, and soon enough, nobody cares that Bunny died. A content warning for suicide jokes in the next 20 seconds. Debilumin is consumed by grief, and so Machi helpfully supplies him with a gun. Jesus. Candy shows up to an empty apartment and freaks out, thinking that it's only a matter of time before the general public discovers that he's not really dead. Machi and Debilumin argue over which one of them should kill themselves, and the gun goes off on its own and decides the answer is both of them. Candy and Jean-Francois show up to the Aqua Bar too late. Bunny is spinning a story about a near-death experience and heroic return. Candy, annoyed at first, ends up satisfied with how much money they made off the whole thing. Episode 46, Full House. The army is on high alert for threats of terrorism and receives what they deem to be a credible threat from this mysterious, shadowy figure. Whoever could it be? Debilumin laughs about his plan working out. His intention isn't exactly terrorism, but to use the military to terrorize Bunny Maloney. The military storms into Bunny's apartment in the middle of the night, insisting that they need to surveil the opposite building for harboring terrorists. They quickly make life miserable for the Protect team and refuse to acknowledge that the apartment they're observing is obviously unoccupied. Annoying soldier montage. Once Noakak insists on sleeping on Bunny's bed, he loses his temper and yells at them to get out, which makes the soldiers turn on him. Once all three of them are out of the apartment, Debilumin and Machi remotely broadcast a conversation into the empty apartment, which pins the blame for the terrorist threat on the Protect team. When they come back, all three are held at gunpoint and violently interrogated, but fortunately for them, Debilumin and Machi kept their microphone running, which causes the military to figure out the ruse, and the submarine gets bombed. Back at the Maloney residence, they're tossing out all the stuff that the military left behind, and they stumble upon a recording from an actual terrorist and freak out. Episode 47, Doomsday. There's a total solar eclipse coming up. Bunny Maloney, while attempting to figure out what exactly a solar eclipse is, stumbles upon a conspiracy website that claims that the eclipse is the harbinger of total destruction and that humanity will be wiped out from an asteroid collision shortly after the sun is covered. Bunny completely buys it and then emails the website to everyone he knows. Charlotte, Ben, and Jean-Francois start writing their bucket lists. Charlotte writes Find a Man 3 times and, having already done that today, checks them all off. Ben's wish is to find a girlfriend and Charlotte rejects him, which is good because I'm pretty sure he's a kid, 13 to 16 at most. Jean-Francois writes Jean-Francois, which moves Charlotte to tears. Debilumin weeps over the prospect of dying alone. Meanwhile, the city is completely overtaken by riots and looting. The businessmen plow ahead with their plans for an eclipse party, now using a you might as well enjoy yourselves before we all die kind of tactic. And I guess Charlotte changed her mind about the whole not coming onto a child thing. Bunny and Candy decide to use the Bunny Ganger to intercept and destroy the asteroid, which Stan insists never existed in the first place. Team Debilumin is throwing a doomsday party. As Machi launches off in a rocket share for unclear reasons, the Protect team sees it and mistakes it for the asteroid. The town is convinced that the world has been saved, and Machi lands on the submarine. Stan chastises Bunny for spreading such a dangerous rumor, and breaking news, there's a warrant out for Bunny's arrest for inciting all the riots. The end. Episode 48, Computers Have Feelings Too. Stan downloads an AI girlfriend, and Bunny calls and makes fun of him for it. Stan asks him not to tell anyone, a request which he promptly ignores. Back at the Maloney residence, there's an advertisement for a movie starring a heroine with gun titties. Bunny is hoping to go to the movie's release party, but Candy reminds them that they promised to meet Stan's new computer girlfriend. He attempts to distract her and run off, but only Ben and Jean-Francois get away. Charlotte gets killed on the way there, but she's fine now. Everybody meets the virtual girlfriend, and although Candy had an open mind at first, she now finds this unforgivably lame. Bunny makes himself scarce and gets to know the virtual girlfriend on a more personal level, quickly becoming smitten with it due to the fact that it enables all his bad habits. Debilumin's evil plan in this episode is to get a bootleg tape of the movie and sell copies. Candy and Charlotte insist that Stan not give up on finding a real-life girlfriend, and the AI becomes jealous and starts identifying them as a threat. It takes over the Bunny Ganger and tries to kill Charlotte, and the computer identifies her as an incorrigible slut. Then it turns its attention on Candy for trying to convince Stan to get rid of her. Bunny, having been knocked out by the AI, accidentally accesses Stan's hologram system and goes and calls Jean-Francois for help. Earlier there was what I assumed to be a little throwaway joke where the military tests a missile by accident, but Chekhov's missile ends up coming back and blowing up the submarine. Candy ends up talking the robot down from its violent rampage. Later, the virtual girlfriend dumps Stan for a DSL modem. Notice how Jean-Francois was summoned, but he never actually showed up? Yeah, he ran out of gas and is now stuck in the desert. Episode 49, Trading Places. Everybody's cleaning up after a party, except for Bunny, who's being a layabout as usual. Candy accuses him of never doing anything around the house. They decide to trade roles with each other for a while to see which one has it worse. That means Bunny has to take care of the cleaning, cooking, shopping, and managing of finances, while Candy gets to mess around and tend to the fish tank. Neither of them thrive at their new roles. Bunny is terrible at all of his new responsibilities and constantly wants to give up, and Candy finds no enjoyment in Bunny's hobbies. Meanwhile, Debilumin and Machi also agree to swap roles. The next day, Bunny is sent out to clean the mech, which Candy is upset about because she genuinely enjoys that job and hates laying about and watching TV. Each of them continues to get more and more miserable. At the submarine, Machi sucks at scheming and Debilumin sucks at coming up with witty retorts. Bunny forfeits the bet at the prospect of having to spend a whole day with Charlotte, but it's discovered that Candy was stashing most of the junk food that she was supposed to be eating, and so neither of them win. Debilumin, still playing the role of Machi, sinks the submarine on purpose. Candy and Bunny still disagree on who has it worse, so they try to summon Stan to be the referee again, and he just disappears instead of giving them an answer. Episode 50, Funny Bunny. Candy and Charlotte are watching a stand-up comedian on TV, and Bunny insists that he could do a better job, so he decides to take part in an upcoming stand-up competition. Debilumin makes fun of him for it, which causes Machi to want to participate, thinking it could be his ticket out of the submarine. Bunny practices his bits, and they're terrible. They're not funny in the first place, and he keeps trying to explain them, making it worse. Candy tries to get him to give up before he humiliates himself, but he's unshaken. Machi practices his set on Debilumin, who is not a receptive audience due to being the butt of most of his jokes. Bunny keeps doing drive-by comedy at everyone he sees, much to the appreciation of nobody. I assume most of his jokes are just French puns, so I can't really say whether any of them are actually funny or not. Noah Cat comments that the only way he could win the competition is with laughing gas, which Bunny takes as a signal to go steal it from the military. Machi tries to set with the spies, who find it much funnier than Debilumin did. The competition finally arrives. Bunny starts delivering his terrible puns, and only Louie is amused. Just as he starts to be pelted with rotten food, he deploys the laughing gas, and now the audience loves his terrible set. Stan, unaffected by the laughing gas due to being a hologram, notices the gas canister and sees the Debilumin brand, and jumps to the conclusion that Debilumin is the one behind this. So, Candy goes and kicks their ass. We arrive back at the competition venue to find that Jean-Francois has inexplicably won. Episode 51, Made for TV. Bunny Maloney is watching Bunny Maloney, which seems to be a relatively sanitized and a much more action-oriented show in this universe, and they have whoever this is to stand in for Debilumin. Debilumin is upset by his portrayal, while Machi is upset that they wrote him out entirely. It seems like Debilumin's evil plan involves making this in-universe show much more like the real-world show by showing them being horrible to each other. Because of their new show, the Protect team are more famous than ever, constantly being swarmed in public. Debilumin hijacks a talk show and broadcasts the footage that he collected, making them look uncool and like bad role models. Suddenly, they're ignored and treated coldly by the public. The next time they turn on the TV, they find a live broadcast of themselves at that very moment. It's Debilumin's new TV show. He holds a text and vote for which one of them should be beat up first. The audience votes Debilumin because they preferred the guy who played him on the first show. I desperately need to know what this guy's deal is. Episode 52, Legend of the Bagman. Welcome to the final episode of Bunny Maloney. The Sailor Man is giving a ghost tour with Ben, Louie, and a few stock humans in tow. He tells the story of the Bagman, who supposedly haunts the area. The rest of the episode is a flashback. Back at home, Candy's cleaning while Bunny is lazing, their usual dynamic, and Bunny pulls a stinky sleeping bag out of the trash and inexplicably starts fantasizing about how it'll make him cool and popular. There's those mysterious pink and green Charlottes again. Bunny is exiled to the couch so long as he's still wearing the sleeping bag, but hey, at least he's having a good time. But then he starts sleepwalking, unleashing a path of terror and destruction wherever he goes. When he wakes up, there's a news broadcast about the Bagman attack, and Jean-Francois is the only one who's able to put together who it is. But Bunny conveniently forgets that he's able to understand him again. Meanwhile, Debilumin is getting jealous that the Bagman is stealing his villainous thunder, and also there's a reward out for his capture, so Debilumin sends out his spies. Candy, still not understanding that the Bagman is Bunny, also tries to capture him. Bunny starts sleepwalking again. Jean-Francois tries to get him to stop, but gets knocked out. Candy sees the Bagman enter their apartment complex and discovers Jean-Francois on the floor, assuming that he's been attacked. Candy beats the crap out of the Bagman, not realizing that it's just Bunny with his eyes closed, although that's never stopped her before. She figures it out once the sleeping bag comes off, and then Charlotte walks in, and she promptly runs out to tell everybody about the true identity of Bagman. An angry mob gathers outside Bunny's apartment building, including Charlotte and Louie. Bunny makes Jean-Francois don the bag to cause a distraction, while the other two go get in the mech. They pick up Jean-Francois and put the sleeping bag over a missile, which blows up Debilumin's submarine one last time. Back in the present, the sailor finishes his story, and the Bagman jumps out to scare them. And that's it. End of series. No remarkable send-off, no actual conclusion. As of that episode, it seems as though Bunny Maloney is simply dead forever. So, I found this show's pitch presentation. Let's take a look. I think it's important to note that the things written here may not be strictly canon, as it was presumably created before the show began development. So notably, the described genre is adolescent comedy, which I find interesting. Adolescent isn't exactly a well-defined category, but off the top of my head, I would probably use it to categorize shows with broad intergenerational appeal that occasionally tackle mature subject matter. In terms of cartoons, that would be stuff like Adventure Time, Steven Universe, or Over the Garden Wall. However, even with this new information, it's still kind of hard to nail down what exactly the original French run of this show is going for. It seems possible that they were trying to market towards a slightly older demographic, considering that the French episodes use some mildly coarse language, like this part where Candy is getting frustrated at a video game. That word is directly translated as shit, but as far as the perceived severity of the swear, it's probably more along the lines of damn it. So maybe this show was aired for a slightly older audience in France? It's kind of hard to say. Let's take a look at the elevator pitch. Bunny Maloney is a comedy action series that focuses on 4 independently quirky characters, a la American sitcom, set against the backdrop of fast-paced action heroics, a la Japanese anime, blending the best elements of both styles. The result is a hilarious mix of conflicting relationships and unresolved issues from their personal lives that cross over into the superhero mecha combat games and missions, exacerbating the crisis while heightening all aspects of the comedy, tension, and drama. All in all, the perfect ingredients for an animation series that is sure to establish Bunny and his friends as trendsetting icons for an international brand. Very optimistic. Really swinging for the fences there. It elaborates on the concept in the next page, and I won't read it all, but here are some highlights. At their worst, the Protect Team members are a conflicted band of self-absorbed neurotics. Whether the pair are in the apartment, at the Protect Team headquarters, or in the heat of a bunny ganger combat, they confront each situation with as much physical and verbal abuse as possible. At the end of every episode, the audience will know that Bunny and the Protect Team have saved the city, possibly the world, only to restore peace and comfort to their own lives, and as a result, have learned absolutely nothing. Yep. That all tracks. I suppose that regardless of how annoying the show became to watch at times, it did accomplish its stated narrative goal. Next is the section that I find the most interesting, the character profiles. I'd mostly just like to share a collection of tidbits that were never codified in the actual show. These profiles describe both Bunny and Candy as about 18 years old, and frankly, I'm calling BS. These two are pushing 30 easy. Bunny and Candy's profiles both claim that they were born on one of de Billiman's farms, Bunny in a hutch and Candy discovered in an Easter basket. Does that mean that the Anthro characters are de Billiman's creation? Kinda wish they'd explored that in the show. Jean-Francois' profile confirms that his age and species are both a total mystery. It also mentions that he has amnesia. Maybe that's still canon, but considering his limited vocabulary, I'm not sure how he'd be able to convey that information to anyone in the first place. It says here that Stan was born in Japan and went to school in Silicon Valley in the United Hutches? Okay, implying that Japan is real in this universe and the United States is not? Or at least it goes by a different name. It also says that he's the one who invented the bunny ganger. I particularly like de Billiman's profile. Species, human. Age, old. Background, a brilliant scientist and strategist who specializes in building weapons of destruction and is very evil. Role in the series, the bad guy. I don't really think this profile really captures what the character ended up becoming. It doesn't mention that he's obsessed with Candy even once. It mostly just describes a very generic, non-de Billiman bad guy. Then there's a sheet with all the secondary characters, mostly notable for containing what I believe is the only unobstructed image of Secretary Octopus's entire body, just in case you needed that. Next up is what I believe are a list of hypothetical integrated products, and if any of these existed, they're lost to time now. The thought of this proposed website is bumming me out in particular because I was not able to find any kind of Bunny Maloney website, and certainly not this fun-themed flash game-filled website that they're proposing. I want the various viral contents, goddammit! Well, there is one piece of supplementary material that I could find evidence for, at least. This was the series of Bunny Maloney character music videos that were once uploaded to the Taffy Kids YouTube channel. Taffy Kids being basically the French equivalent of Kabillion. Unfortunately, all of these have now been removed, although the thumbnails persist on the only remaining evidence of these music videos, their page on the Bunny Maloney fandom wiki. The Bunny music video appears to have been the song used at the end of Jean-Francois Top Model, and Jean-Francois seems to be the song that plays in the background when he plays Bust a Paradance. As far as what Candy's is, though, it's a total mystery. If there are any other copies of these music videos out there, I wasn't able to find them. Also, searches for any alternative uploads of these videos are complicated by the fact that Bunny Maloney was also apparently the name of a reggae musician. Now, before we get into discussing what exactly the hell all of that was, let's do a quick submarine sink tally. In all 52 episodes, de Billiman's submarine descends to a watery grave. In fact, it's never even used as a submarine. Anytime it actually submerges is due to it being blown up. These submarine sinks consistently fall into 5 categories. Type number 1, poetic justice. This is when the submarine sinks as a consequence of de Billiman's actions. This can be intentional, like when the Protect team blows him up in retribution for something he's done to them, or accidental, like if the submarine gets taken down as collateral damage during a conflict that he was responsible for. So long as he started it but wasn't the one to actually sink it, that's poetic justice. Type 2 is the convenient fall guy, where somebody else sinks the sub intentionally, but not as a response to de Billiman's actions, like if he got framed for something that he didn't do. Type 3 is the accidental self-destruct, aka all the times that somebody landed on the self-destruct button. Type 4 is intentional self-destruct, where the button was pressed on purpose. Finally is Type 5, the completely unrelated mishap. This is when the submarine is sunk accidentally and not in response to any of de Billiman's actions. The least utilized submarine sink method is the convenient fall guy, only accounting for 4 out of the 52 total submarine sinks. The second least common is the completely unrelated mishap with 6. Then there's the 2 self-destruct variants, 9 instances of accidental self-destruction, and 13 instances of one of them blowing themselves up on purpose. Finally, there's poetic justice with 20 total submarine sinks, which sounds like a lot, but for a show with this kind of hero-villain format, I thought it would end up being a lot more than half. But no, in fact, if you lump the 2 types of self-destruct sinks together, they end up outnumbering this category. Now it's time to discuss what exactly the hell was that? Let's begin with visuals and form, which is, in my opinion, the indisputably strongest aspect of this show. I don't think it's a controversial opinion that this show looks great. It's genuinely one of the most effective instances of cel-shaded 3D animation I've ever seen. For all the parts of this show that feel poorly considered or half-assed sometimes, the art direction and animation are absolutely not one of them. Every aspect of Bunny Maloney's visual design feels highly intentional down to the smallest detail. Let's look at the opening and closing sequences first. On a fundamental level, this is really one of those clip show assembled from pre-existing footage type openers. However, you don't necessarily notice that when you watch it because it's so chic and polished in the way that it's assembled. The character animations they use are mostly, if not entirely, taken directly from the show, but the framing that surrounds it is bespoke and extremely nice to look at. The candy-colored palettes, the seamless transitions, and the layout of the clip scenes in tandem with the supplementary graphics create a high-polish, visually stunning introduction that effectively tips the viewer off to how well considered the rest of the show's visuals are going to be. The outro sequence is equally strong. The list of names is framed by these eclectic graphics, assembled in a way that looks like a sticker sheet. Fun fact, a lot of these character images are pulled directly from the show's reference material, like these A-posing character silhouettes and this collection of bunny expressions, another example of effective repurposing of pre-existing material. Compared to the average cartoon credit sequence, this one is remarkably well considered and interesting to watch. This consideration of style extends to the show as a whole. Take the framing, for example. A huge majority of the shots used in this show feel extremely intentional with their posing, positioning, and use of color. There are never really any moments where you think, oh, they're phoning it in, or they ran out of budget, or they were in a rush. I would possibly even go as far as to say that I think Bunny Maloney is one of the best looking pieces of TV animation of all time, and if you narrow that down to just 3D animated TV animation, even more so. I'm also extremely impressed with the settings. While there aren't a huge variety of locations, the ones we do have are very well designed. The apartment, for example, the main room has this kind of unusual salmon, aqua, blue, and red color scheme, which sounds much more clashy than it is. By keeping the colors of the room darker than Bunny and Candy, that ensures that they never end up blending into the scenery of the environment. They've also done a really great job at translating these simple 3D shapes into very chic and modern looking furniture. I'd love to live in the Bunny Maloney apartment. I'm especially jealous of their great bathtub. Another gorgeous set is the Aqua Bar, all done in rich blues and aquas with just a little bit of pink to highlight. So many flowing shapes that really lend to that swanky nightclub type vibe. Although it makes sense why Candy and Charlotte are the ones we see the most often in here, since Jean-Francois kind of ends up blending in. Those two are standouts to me, but every location that we get really looks quite nice. One thing that I'm not sure I got the opportunity to mention because it was never relevant to the plot is this show's proclivity to use live-action stock clips. These are usually done to punctuate the characters having an intense emotion. For example, if someone gets mad, then maybe they'll play this volcano erupting, or these two trains colliding. Between that and the footage that tends to play on the TV, I find this show's integration of live footage to be charming, unique, and in service of the comedy. It's clear that the aesthetic of the show was heavily inspired by the Japanese postmodern art movement called superflat, especially the works of Takashi Murakami, who the non-art student public may best know as the artist who made the Kanye graduation bear. As I mentioned in his introduction, that inspiration jumps out the most clearly in Stan's character design. He is a dead ringer for this specific character design style. Superflat is, as the name implies, flat. It's highly graphical, it takes heavy inspiration from both Japanese and Western commercial art, and borrows heavily from kawaii aesthetics. Using superflat as inspiration for this show's art style isn't just appealing in a design sense, it's also thematically relevant to the world of the show. Superflat and consumerism are inherently linked, and whether the movement celebrates or criticizes that is a subject of debate. This is parallel with the world of Bunny Maloney. The world that they live in is hyper-consumerist, hyper-capitalist, and places extremely high value on appearance, all of which the narrative both celebrates and criticizes. Bunnyville is the ethos of Superflat distilled into a city. So, of course, their most famous citizens would be what is essentially a group of marketable, easily identifiable mascot characters. That said, I think it's also worth noting how Bunny Maloney has kind of an odd relationship with its Japanese-ness. The style exchange between Japanese and Western animation is a well-documented phenomenon, but Bunny Maloney really wants you to never forget where its inspiration comes from. Besides the overtly Japanese-inspired aesthetic, there's also the fact that the written language in this world is garbled kana, with Latin script only appearing very rarely, and mostly in moments that are implied to not be in-universe. I imagine that this decision was made for purely aesthetic reasons, because it's not clear whether Japan is something that even exists within the world of the show, unless you want to accept the pitch presentation's claim that it does. Despite how clearly Japan-obsessed the show is, Bunny Maloney suffers from the same issue as a lot of other anime-inspired cartoons regarding its depiction of Asian people. While the show generally steers clear of overtly racist characterization and cringeworthy fake accents, Asian people in the show are depicted with permanently closed eyes and yellow skin. The most notable example of this is the only named Asian character, Ting, one half of the duo of businessmen. You can also see this character design pattern in the background characters, albeit fairly rarely. One could argue that Ting's shady businessman character could also be hearkening to some unsavory depictions of Asian people, but I'm not all the way convinced of it, especially since he exclusively acts in tandem with his non-Asian co-worker/husband. Either way, at least the show is better about it than Robot Boy, although that's an extremely low bar. Well, on a related note, let's discuss the character designs next. This is another aspect of the show that I find to be really strong. Let's start with Bunny Maloney himself. I think he's a great example of why simple is sometimes best. He's all one color, his face consists of his big dot eyes and optional mouth, and that's about it. And yet he's memorable, identifiable, and hard to mistake for other rabbit person characters despite his extremely simple design. Candy Bunny, on the other hand, I think is relatively weak in comparison. And this is mostly just due to her looking too much like a bunny clone. They look so much alike that if I knew nothing about the show and was asked what is the relationship between these two characters, I'd probably assume that she was his sister. This could be resolved with a change as simple as making her a different color. Jean-Francois, as usual, is perfect in every way. I particularly like the detail of him being the only one to have no eye highlight. If the world ever needs a new autism creature, I suggest Jean-Francois. Debillaman I thought at first was kind of nasty looking, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because he's the villain. This is also emphasized by the sallow, drab color scheme that he brings to the scenes that feature him. But his design ended up growing on me. There's some shots where he actually looks downright adorable. I think the generic human characters are probably the weakest link. They're not remarkably bad by any means, but they're also not particularly interesting. They're serviceable as background characters, but they don't really meet the kind of aesthetic quality standard established by the main characters and settings. I definitely think it's questionable how every single female character is compulsively given a pronounced rack and teeny waist. I mean, for some characters it definitely tracks. I wouldn't want Charlotte to be any other way. But like the background characters? Secretary Octopus? Come on, have some restraint. Alright, that's enough on the visuals, let's talk about the writing. Since we were already discussing the characters, let's tackle characterization. My butt hurts! Breaking news, my butt hurts. Let me just preface this with the fact that I think there's no problem with shows having people who are fundamentally shitty as their protagonists. Being cowardly, lazy, a bad partner, or a self-serving grifter absolutely does not preclude a character from being interesting to watch. However, the shows that most effectively employ the trope of the unheroic protagonist nearly always make them likable at the very least. Maybe not by the other people in their universe, but by the audience. Take Invader Zim, a show that I've already compared Bunny Maloney to. Both of the deuteragonists are self-serving, myopic assholes, and it's never clearly established which one of them we're supposed to be rooting for. However, they're written in a way that allows them, or at the very least one or the other, to still be likable. For Zim, it's his total incompetence that makes him less of a threat and more of a silly little guy, despite his desire for world domination. For Dib, it's his unflappable dedication to protecting the Earth, no matter how much humanity spits on him for trying to do so. And this is what I feel like Bunny Maloney, and in particular the characterization of Bunny and Candy, really suffers from. Bunny and Candy have extremely few redeeming qualities. They have no goals or aspirations that aren't entirely self-serving, even though they're literal superheroes. In Candy's case, she has a couple of redeeming qualities, but her issues are so malignant compared to Bunny's that she doesn't even break even. You never want to watch them win, even though they always do. You never want to see them make up at the end of an episode, even though they always do. The dynamic of these two is just two people being awful to each other again and again forever, and that is just not fun to watch. They are never on each other's side. They have zero trust in each other and zero reason to trust each other. You consistently get the feeling that they'd both be better off if they just broke up for good. They're like a couple of parents who insist that they need to stay together for the kid in this case being Jean-Francois. They're not like a Homer and Marge type couple where they're dysfunctional but ultimately love each other and make each other happy. They're just enemies who screw occasionally. It's also obnoxious how they're constantly rewarded for their crappy behavior over and over again. Part of the enjoyment of watching an asshole protagonist is watching them suffer as a result of their actions. But the Protect team basically never suffers any actual consequences, even once they get erased once a new episode begins. Instead, the one who suffers the most is inexplicably Jean-Francois, and it's extremely frustrating to watch him get punished and tormented because he never does anything to deserve that. Maybe that's part of why I liked the episode Community Service so much. Bunny Maloney so rarely sees any consequences for anything that he does that it automatically becomes really amusing to have a whole episode dedicated to him getting punished for being so reckless and self-absorbed. I don't have many complaints about the characterization of Stan, but I do think his supposed geekiness is more of a tell and don't show kind of situation. If they really wanted him to be a hyper nerd, they could have established that more clearly. Sometimes I get the feeling that he's a bit of a Mary Sue due to seeming to know exactly what is going on at all times. But then again, that's kind of necessary at times to keep these conflicts within their 11-minute confinement. No nuts on Louis. He's great, and he improves every episode where he's allowed to have a significant role. Charlotte, though... Don't get me wrong, I love Charlotte. She's that girl, she's the moment, etc. But honestly, I would say that her characterization comes off as pretty misogynistic. Let's do a quick flyover of her personality traits. Slutty, obsessed with men but can't get them to stick around. Bad friend due to chronic thirst. Completely stupid in every way. And that's about it. I just feel like she could have had a bit more depth. It's fine if she's slutty, it's fine if she's stupid, but don't you think it's kind of a missed opportunity that they never reversed any of those things for comedy's sake? Like, maybe she inexplicably knows a language that none of the others do and it gets them out of a bind, or she just has these random skills that she's inhumanly good at, and either of those things could be played for comedy and make her character a little more well-rounded. Debilitament I'm kind of on the fence about, because on one hand I kind of feel like his role in the show is a little bit underbaked. For a designated villain character, there sure are a lot of episodes where he does basically nothing but offer snarky commentary from the sidelines. But then again, I also kind of find this aspect kind of compelling. It's sort of unique to have a villain character with seemingly no other motive behind his villainy other than lust and spite. I mean, there are other villains who are like that, but I'm not sure I've ever seen it done quite as toothlessly as old Debilitament. Incel villains are usually kind of creepy and threatening, but Debilitament is mostly just a loser about it instead of a threat. I mean, he only kidnaps Candy once, and not for very long. A lot of his antagonistic actions against the Protect team are basically high-tech pranks, and there's so many episodes where he just sits back and watches Bunny and Candy's crappy relationship and hopes that they break up for good. Despite all his resources and his technical proficiency, he has basically no other goal other than making the Protect team break up, making Candy fall in love with him, and very rarely boosting his own public image or making a quick buck. Also, I guess he's a trophy hunter, but I'd personally like to expunge that whole episode from canon, s'il vous plaît. The way he totally broke down when he thought Bunny Maloney was dead I think was a great character moment. It's a bit revealing to why his acts of villainy are generally so minor and harmless. He's less of a traditional villain and more of a professional hater. And so, of course, he has this complete breakdown when the foundation of his haterism goes away. I think it would have been interesting if Bunnyville ever had to deal with a more pressing threat, because despite his impotence, Debilitament is still the big bad guy of the Bunny Maloney universe. I just think it would have been cute if he and the Protect team had to team up to defeat a real threat that was posing a danger to their status quo. Like, there was the zombie virus and the one time that everybody almost died, but neither of those situations ever necessitated them working together. I don't really have much to say about Machi. He's great and all, but he mostly just serves as a one-liner delivery device. Moving on from the characters, let's talk about the quality of the writing in a more broad sense. Listen, I really wanted to like this show. I want to like it so badly, and hell, despite everything, I think I pretty much do. Despite the obnoxious I hate my wife humor, and the tiresome infighting, and the over-the-top lewdness, and the jokes that just didn't land, I think I do still like this show. I certainly like it a hell of a lot better than Horseland. However, I am also extremely frustrated with this show, because while it was mostly good to mediocre, I think it really could have been great, and without changing all that much about it. I feel like the fixation this show has that drives the overall experience down worse than anything else is its constant reliance on relationship drama comedy. Bunny and Candy's relationship is pure hell, and it is not fun to watch. Let's do another quick tally. How many episodes does the conflict arise due to the show's villain, and how many is it because of Bunny and Candy's awful relationship? I'll include all Protect team infighting in that latter category, and anything else will just go in other. If it's a mix of infighting and debilitament or something else, I'll just count it as whoever started it. You ready for this? It turns out that the one who initiates conflicts the least often is Debilitament, with only 11 out of 52 episodes. The next most frequent was the other category, accounting for conflicts caused by the government, military, or other factors that have nothing to do with either of them for 16 total episodes. And finally, Protect team infighting? 25 episodes, nearly every single one of them being Bunny versus Candy conflicts. That is nearly half of the entire series! There are more than double the amount of episodes where these characters are at each other's throats instead of working together to defeat the bad guy. It's annoying. My ideal version of the show would have that percentage way, way down, like less than a third of total episodes at absolute maximum. The debilment and other conflict episodes are always better anyways. They're always more funny. Like, give me a reason to root for these two. Give me a reason to think that there's some greater purpose for them staying together, because as it stands, there isn't one. Besides the obnoxious relationship drama, I feel like this show's comedy can be pretty hit or miss. Where I feel like the show is strongest is when these characters get involved in their world's super bizarre society. I'm intrigued about the little breadcrumbs they drop about how the civilization works, and I'm also not upset that it was never clearly laid out. I like the kind of speculation that you can do with that open-endedness. I still don't know if Secretary Octopus is the totalitarian ruler of Bunnyville, but maybe she is! It's fun to think about. The quality of the one-liners is generally mixed. You get certain episodes where they're really on top of their game, but other times the pacing feels strange, the jokes don't really land or are just poorly translated, or it's just more that divorce humor that I hate. Like most cartoons, the show had a stable of writers that took the lead for various episodes, and I get the feeling that the sudden jump in writing quality may correspond to certain contributors. I noticed when going through the title cards of these episodes that there's one writer who is responsible for all of my favorite and my least favorite episodes. Community Service and Charity, my two favorites, are written by Lee Walters. The Dispense Sense 9000 and Think Extinct, my absolute least favorite episodes, are also written by Lee Walters. I don't exactly know what to make of this. I guess he has pretty good comedy sensibilities, but just doesn't always know where to draw the line. However, for the most part, this show at its worst is usually just mediocre and not actively bad. I mean, there are a couple very notable exceptions, but there aren't a lot of episodes that I would give a failing grade. Anyway, I guess we had to get to this at some point. I would be remiss not to mention this show's odd proclivity for sexual humor. And again, I am not against sexual humor in cartoons. I am not against the majority of a show's humor being sexual. That can be funny. However, I do care about directing that kind of humor to an appropriate target audience, because I personally believe that kids should not be introduced to these concepts by a cute and innocent-looking cartoon show. The show makes a lot of jokes and references a lot of subject matter that the average 7 to 10-year-old would have no concept of, and I think that is a problem. I've seen some people claim that the original intention of the show was to be a proper adult comedy with a late teen to young adult demographic, but that claim just does not hold water. That adolescent description from the pitch implies that the target audience goes as young as tweens, and while that's fine for a lot of these episodes, most of them even, there are a handful that feel really over the line. And it's definitely not a full-on adult show, as evidenced by the amount of jokes they write in about how they're not allowed to talk about sex.
Hey, Jean-Francois, good luck with the, I'm embarrassed.
It feels like the show tried to cram in the raunchiest humor that they could get away with in a general audience's show, and I think that's a big reason why there's 20 episodes that can no longer be found in English. Listen, I have very little frame of reference for what the target audience was supposed to be in France, and the sources I have found haven't revealed much. Maybe over there it was more of a teen and up kind of thing, which would make me a lot more okay with some of the show's raunchy humor. But what I do know for a fact is that this show was marketed entirely towards 13 and under audiences in the USA, and that I am much, much less okay with. Let's take a look at the other programming available on Kabillion and Kabillion Girls Rule. My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic, Thomas the Tank Engine, Lego Ninjago, Peppa Pig. Are you telling me that there was an actual adult human who watched this show and was like, "Yup, looks good to me, this is clearly where the show is meant to go. No thoughts, head empty." That plus the fact that the show was labeled Y7 in the States. Not G, not PG, goddamn Y7. Did anybody watch this? Listen, I know that kids will watch shows that are inappropriate for them. And I know that this will happen regardless of the channels that they go on. I just think that there's value in having media be properly labeled and distributed even if younger audiences are going to watch them anyway. For example, I know that little kids are going to watch South Park, Family Guy, Hell of a Boss, what have you. But I think there's value in those kids understanding that those shows aren't for them. I think it's good that there's some amount of signaling that maybe they shouldn't be repeating the jokes that they hear and don't understand, or maybe they shouldn't be trying to emulate those characters' behavior. While I am annoyed that Kabillion has attempted to scrub the English dub of the show out of existence, I can also kind of understand why it happened. This show was an embarrassment to the network. It never should have been on there in the first place, and whoever allowed it to be on there, in the wise words of Stan Uki, committed a monumental up. That said, I also don't really know what network would have been the best fit for this one. It's not really raunchy enough to fit into Adult Swim or similar programming, and it's not tame enough for Cartoon Network. Well, I mean, most episodes probably would be, but those exceptions really stick out. Anyway, to finish this video off, I'd just like to discuss how I think it could have been fixed. It's far from an unsalvageable concept, and it's really promising, actually, which is the reason why I'm all the more frustrated that it fell into as many pitfalls as it did. As I previously mentioned, let's just erase the target audience issue entirely and make the show indisputably TVMA, or whatever the French equivalent of that is. This show clearly wants to be raunchy. It wants to make lewd jokes at the expense of its characters. So let's just cut out all the BS that comes with having to tiptoe around the fact every time and just let Bunny Maloney say fuck. I mean, you could also take it the other way, just keep the show fundamentally the same but really de-emphasize the raunchy humor. But to be honest, I think the show would just be better if it was allowed to lean into it. I mean, come on, Debiliment has a literal dick face and they're barely allowed to acknowledge it. Next big issue, make Candy and Bunny less of an unsalvageable mess. I don't need them to be constantly lovey-dovey, they can still be dysfunctional. I just want to be under the impression that they like each other even a little bit. Let's make these two a bit more compatible, and let's also tone down the amount of domestic violence. On a related note, I want more Debiliment versus the Protect Team, and less the Protect Team versus each other. Debiliment's a fun character, there's no reason why he can't stir things up a little more often than he does. Even the episodes that are mostly just Bunny and Candy relationship drama could be subtly improved by having Debiliment be the reason why they're fighting in the first place. Although, my ideal version of the show would still include that a lot less often than it does. I also feel like we could have had a lot more one-off threats and villains, like Blaireau the zombie shrimp. Please, just anything but these two bickering. I'd also like to see more from the side characters like Stan, Charlotte, and Louie. Despite what a constant presence in the show she was, I'm surprised that we didn't get even a single Charlotte feature episode. She played major roles in certain ones, sure, but never as the main character or the driving force of the plot. And that's especially strange in comparison with Louie, who's a much more minor character, but gets a couple starring roles. I think I just like the idea of this because when these three characters are highlighted, that means Bunny Candy Divorce Court is not. I think I'd also really enjoy it if this show really played up how screwed up the society of Bunnyville is. It definitely makes some major nods towards being harsh and totalitarian, but it never really crosses the line into addressing that directly. I'd love a bit more exploration into the corruption of the government and the military, and how the Protect Team is used as a tool in that corruption. This isn't really a show that ever ends up diving into more serious territory. Well, not intentionally anyway. But I think it could have been pretty interesting if it did. My final suggestion as to how the show could be better is more Jean-Francois episodes. Come on, he's the best, and he gets so few featured episodes. And all the ones that he's the main character are good because I have written Think Extinct not just out of the canon of the show, but out of the fabric of reality itself. I don't think it's a problem that his communication is limited. I think sometimes the very best TV episodes are when the dialogue is forcibly limited or removed entirely, and the writers and animators have to creatively express the plot without telling the audience anything. I would have loved a Jean-Francois episode like that, and I think it was a major missed opportunity that they didn't. So that's about all for Bunny Maloney. I started toying around with the idea of making a video about this show like half a year ago and was not expecting it to be the kind of immense undertaking that it turned out to be. I have a lot of mixed feelings about this show. I think it's absolutely a visual marvel and incredibly good looking. It handily outclasses some 3D animated shows that are being made today. But it just never lived up to what it could have been. In a way that just makes the episodes where the show did get it right hurt even more, because I feel like there could have been way more of those. But I don't think it would have been too insanely challenging to imply the same kind of energy that was given to charity, Bunny's Fish Go Off, and community service to more of these episodes. It's frustrating because I think it could have been an absolute cult classic, and it's really, really close to having aged well. But ultimately, this show became too dredged down with its tiresome relationship drama, confused target audience, and bat-shit international distribution choices that it just never really gets to receive that title. I do hope the show can get a bit of an audience revival, although I doubt it'll get to the point of warranting a reboot or series continuation. It's far from a bad show, but it's absolutely a misguided show. I'm not angry, I'm just disappointed. I do hope that the rest of the English dub is recovered someday, and if you have any leads on where to find any of the 20 Lost English episodes or the missing music videos, the folks over at the Lost Media Wiki would surely be eager to help you out. As always, the best way to support me is by subscribing to my Patreon. I admit that this video is a way bigger undertaking than expected, and so I wasn't able to budget my time to get a supplementary exclusive video out with this one, but that'll be my next priority once this one's out. Thank you so much to Khan, Dr. Dreamerella, Fishcatch, Grizzly, Luca Anastasius, Ms. Goat, Nicole Manassian, and Ren. Okay,